Hey folks, welcome back. So today we're taking a first look at the recent arrival of the new Alien Evolved edition. So this is from Free League. As we know, they made a very successful Alien RPG some 5 years ago or so. This is not a second edition, it's more of a 1.5 if you like, which seems to be the popular thing to do recently. In this case, I think it was a wise choice. Now the original version of Alien, which you can see right here, it's a beautiful and very fun game. I had shown it before when I picked up all of it during a Black Friday sale from Free League. The core book, however, is a 400-page monster. I love the cover, though. And the layout was very atmospheric, very appropriate to the Alien visual style. However, you can see there's quite a lot of open space, large fonts, lots of emptiness around tables and stuff like that, and the readability was hurt somewhat by having things like this all black background with lighter text against it, a critique that was leveled at Star Trek Adventures 1E as well. You'll note I did a review of Star Trek Adventures 2E recently, which got rid of that problem, but introduced other problems by changing some core subsystems of the game and main systems of the game that I didn't like very much. I will say happily, just from the beginning here, that changes made in Alien Evolved are relatively minimal and just more like clarifications, and a change in layout and design, which I think works out for the best, compressing the rulebook but not getting rid of the beautiful content within, and it also manages to change the layout without losing the character of the setting, which was one of my critiques of Star Trek Adventures 2E, was that it didn't look very Star Trek-y after they changed the layout to the new format. That's not the case here, as you will see. But I just want to give you a quick sort of reminder of what the original book looked like before we start diving into the new stuff. I think if you are already an owner of Alien, you will probably have found there are free corrections for things like the stress and panic rules that you can apply. The games are fully designed to be compatible, so you can use the new stuff like Rapture Protocol here, new cinematic adventure with your original Alien rulebook. If you want to, you don't need to buy the Evolved edition. However, if you want a version of the core rulebook that's a bit tighter, looks nicer, is easier on the eyes, and has those rules clarifications built in for reference at the table, then I definitely think it's worth giving this a look. So, with that out of the way, one thing that we're missing out on in the Evolved edition is that they had previously had Hope's Last Day, which is now the starter set scenario, as an introductory scenario in the core rules. Now that's no longer the case. That's moved over into its separate set. The starter set, however, remains a great value in this new Evolved edition. It contains all the dice you really need to play the game, tons of scenario material, really nice character sheets, all that stuff, and it's a very affordable price compared to just buying dice by themselves. So if you're just starting out with Alien, then I would pick up the starter set first. It has pretty much all the rules you need, minus character creation and all the lore and extra weapons and whatnot. And then when you see how satisfying and fun it is to play, go for the core rulebook and you can expand outward from there. One thing I would recommend is that if you're interested in the Draconis Strain trilogy, which was the previous 3 cinematic box sets for Alien, then I would imagine you need to go pick those up pretty soon. As far as I know, they're not going to be reprinted, at least not in their present form. So I would go and pick those up and make sure you have those in your collection, because it's a really good set of stories written by a well-known author of alien fiction and novels. So they're really well done and well worth playing under the new rules. So with that out of the way, let's start with looking at the starter set. These smaller box sets, like you see here with Rapture Protocol, these are cinematic adventures. So they're designed to replicate the feel of an Alien movie. So they'll take a few sessions to play. They are a lot longer than an actual movie. They come with all the cool stuff you need for that, but they're not designed to teach you the game. It's assumed that you know how to play already. The starter set, however, is designed for the newbie, and that's where we shall start. And here we see it's got a fantastic cover. As always, Free League never lets us down on the visual component of their items. The starter set used to be the first scenario in that Draconis Strain trilogy, and now it's Hope's Last Day, which was, as I said, the intro adventure that used to be in the core rulebook, but it's been expanded significantly for this Evolved edition. And it's a very popular scenario, so it was a good choice, I think. And you can see here on the back, there's a lovely quote. I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies. There's also a content warning. It's a horror game that includes dark and violent themes, not suitable for children. So they talk about the Alien Evolved edition expanding upon the original experience. It provides an updated and revised version that will feel fresh for rookie and veteran players alike. So you get your rules booklet with abridged Evolved edition rules, an expanded edition of the fan favorite Hope's Last Day adventure, a huge double-sided map, 864 by 558 millimeters. One side has charted space in the year 2183, and the other features the Hadley's Hope terraforming colony known from the movie Aliens. So we get right in there, get to do a bit of alien fighting in an actual location from the Aliens film. Then you have 5 pre-generated characters, playing cards for gear, initiative, personal agendas, and panic responses, 10 engraved base dice, and 10 stress dice, which are designed specifically for Aliens' unique system, a supply dial for keeping track of limited resources, like air, ammunition, and time, rules reference sheets, cardboard tokens, and a high-quality plastic miniature of a xenomorph, which is a new addition to this version of the starter set. And as usual, the box itself is really sturdy and beautifully made and constructed as per usual with Free League. Now inside, I pledged for the Kickstarter with this, so I got some bonuses, including this Weyland-Yutani Corp dice bag, Building Better Worlds, and I've used that to stow the 2 kinds of dice. Now, important thing about Alien is it uses the Year Zero engine, which is the house system for most of Free League's games, with a number of different variations to it at this point. The Alien variation is very well suited to horror role-playing, and there's a variant of this in use in the Walking Dead universe role-playing game as well. So you have these normal dice, the black dice. You roll a number of these according to the stat and skill that you're using for a given check. Then you have the panic dice, which you roll according to the amount of panic you've accrued due to witnessing various horrible events or being subjected to them yourself. Now, the standard dice, take a quick look. So as with most D6-based Year Zero engine games, the only number that really matters is the 6. So the 6, as you can see, has a special marker on it, which indicates success. So you'll roll a number of dice equal to your stat plus skill. You roll that dice pool and look for any 6s. If you get a 6, then you passed. If you get extra successes, you can do stunts. So you can do additional cool things depending on what the roll is for that will help you to get through whatever situation you're trying to survive. Now, the panic dice, they're a little bit different because panic dice is an excellent mechanic for horror, and I really think it's very cleverly done. So here you have 2 values that matter. You've got the face hugger here on the 1, which you can see on my left, and the 6 again is a success. So if you have, say, 3 panic, and I'm rolling a dice pool with 6 regular dice, I might not get any successes on the regular dice, but if I get a success on a panic die, that still counts. I still pass the check. However, if I get any 1s, any face huggers, that means I need to roll a panic check, and those can be disastrous. It's kind of like failing a sanity roll in Call of Cthulhu or having a bout of madness. You will end up possibly running away in fear or firing your weapon at random, potentially injuring your comrades. Lots of bad things can happen. So the more stress you accumulate, because the adrenaline is building up in your system, you have a better chance of succeeding, but you also have this chance now of getting a panic result, which you don't want to get. So there's a lovely tension there. As you accumulate panic dice, your dice pool gets bigger, and you're trying to pass tasks whilst wishing and praying that the face hugger doesn't show up in your pool. Of course, there are ways to reduce your stress, mainly through hanging out with your buds, doing some banter, having medics do checks on you, and so forth. Since it's a less granular resource than having, up to 99 points of sanity in Call of Cthulhu, they've made it a little bit easier to recover stress points when you need to. Now we have the new miniature as well. Personally, I have no use for this because I'll be playing online. It's a lovely little miniature, I have to say. It's 28mm scale. It's got nice detail on it. You can see all the striations on its tail. You can see its various bits of armor plating, disgusting teeth and claws. A very well done miniature. Now, you can also get a set of miniatures that replace all the tokens in the Rapture Protocol. I did not go for this because, again, miniatures take up a lot of space, and I'm already deluged in RPG books, let alone miniatures. Don't even want to get into that. But they are available, and I think if you're playing around at the physical table, they will definitely enhance your experience, make it more immersive. One thing I will say, one of the other accessories you get, of course, is this lovely deck of cards, which was mentioned on the back. However, this was the single hardest to open pack of cards I've ever encountered in an RPG box. You can see that it's bent a little bit here because of how hard I had to work to get it to open. What I eventually did was cut off these 2 wings here that were folded in because they were so tightly caught amongst these 2 openings here in the top part of the box that it was almost impossible to open it and reopen it. So I've just took them away so that I could access the cards easier. That hopefully will be addressed. I think maybe with stretch goals and stuff, they added some new cards and it got a bit out of hand, but it's too tight. Basically. Now, you got some very useful cards in here. You've got your stress response cards. You can hand these out to players, or you can also hand out digital versions as well. And they tell you, what stress response you're currently dealing with and give you a reminder of that. So if you're jumpy, when you push a skill roll, you get +2 stress level instead of +1. Aliens RPG also includes a roll pushing mechanic, like all the other Year Zero engine games do, where you can roll a dice pool. If it's not successful or successful enough, you can push it and roll it again. However, you usually have to pay a cost. In other games, you will frequently get a condition. In Alien, it adds 1 to your stress. But if you've got Jumpy, then you'll add 2 to your stress, which means in your next roll, you'll have to roll 2 additional stress die instead of just 1 more. Tunnel vision means you lose 2 dice from your wits, put dice pools. Empathy -2 for aggravated, -2 for shakes on agility, -2 for strength on frantic. Deflated means you can't push any skill rolls unless you're Jumpy. Paranoid means you cannot give or receive help on skill rolls until the panic ends. It's pretty tough. Hesitant, you automatically get the number 10 initiative card in combat. So system uses a 1 to 10 sort of ordering of initiative based on cards. So the card that you draw will tell you when you go during that combat. It's very simple. Number 10 goes last because you go from lowest to highest. So if you're hesitant, you always go on number 10 until your panic stops. If several PCs are hesitant, you'll draw the highest value cards randomly and give those out. Freeze means you're frozen by fear, you can't move on your next turn, and you're unable to perform any interrupt actions, like reactions, before then. Seek cover, you immediately seek full cover in the zone if it's cluttered. This is an interrupt action break in the normal turn order. Once in cover, your stress level is reduced 1 step, but you lose your next turn and are unable to perform any interrupt actions before then. If you're in an open zone, you scream instead. And scream is the next one, conveniently. You scream your lungs out, losing your next turn and unable to perform any interrupt actions before then. Your stress level is reduced 1 step, but every friendly PC in the zone must make an immediate panic roll. So Scream is where you get panic cascade possibilities if you're bunched together with your allies in the same zone. That was one of the rules questions that frequently came up in Alien 1E. If you were experiencing panic, it could cause panic rolls in your teammates very easily, whereas here they've defined when those rolls happen so you don't have constant cascades of panic rolls leading to total chaos. We have Flee. You move away from the source of panic into an adjacent zone if that's possible. You do that by breaking the turn order again. After the move, you reduce your stress by 1, but all friendly PCs get stress +1 in the starting zone. On your next turn and subsequent turns, you must spend all your actions to continue to move away until you find a reasonably safe place where you must remain until your panic stops. You cannot perform any interrupt actions before then. If you can't move out of your zone, you become catatonic instead. Frenzy, this is a bad one. You immediately attack the nearest person or creature, friendly or not. Every friendly PC in the zone must make an immediate panic roll. You won't stop until you or the target is broken or your panic stops. You cannot perform interrupt actions before then. So basically, you just start attacking whoever's nearest to you and you just don't stop until your panic runs out or one of you is down. So that's pretty rough. Catatonic, you're doomed. You collapse to the floor and can't move, rambling or staring blankly into oblivion until your panic stops. That just makes you extremely vulnerable. So these are really handy, these stress cards. You get a couple copies of each and you can hand these out. Of course, they're digital versions as well for play online. Then when there are cards for wounded status, so if you're wounded, movement in combat becomes a full action for D6 days. It's pretty rough. Fatigued means you can't recover health. You continue to make survival rolls at regular intervals. Each failed roll causes 1 point of damage and +1 stress. If you end up broken by fatigue, then you make death rolls for stamina at the same interval as the survival rolls. Yikes. Then we have our personal agendas for the different characters, which we'll gleefully skim past so that it doesn't spoil the storyline. Agenda cards are given out to each of the pre-gen characters at different points in the story. So each character you can see has multiple agenda cards. And as each act of the story changes, your agenda will change. And your agendas won't necessarily align with those of your colleagues. You might have some corporate spies in there, who knows. Then you have your initiative cards, and they tell you to rotate the card horizontally when you perform a quick action, and flip it over when you perform a full action or your second quick action. So in a combat encounter where initiative is necessary, you can either do 2 quick actions or you can do a full action. And so this gives you a handy visual aid to determine when that's been done. And as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 initiative cards. Then we have some handy reference cards for weapons. So we have the M4A3 service pistol. It has a modifier of +2, damage of 2, range and ammo, weight, cost, all noted here. We've got the VP70 MA6 service pistol, 357 Magnum, which has a higher damage. We have the Watatsumi DV303 bolt gun. It's got a low modifier but high damage and armor piercing special effect. Electrostatic pistol, the ES4. It does stun damage and is armor piercing. RXF M5 EVA pistol. That has armor piercing as well. The pulse rifle, high modifier, medium damage, armor piercing, full auto, and a grenade launcher. Pretty dang good. The pulse rifle is armor piercing, full auto, and unreliable, which means if you roll 7+ on your stress response roll and get a jam, you have to roll a heavy machinery skill roll successfully to clear the jam. So that can be tough. Pulse assault rifle, AK-4047, gives you armor piercing and full auto. The scope rifle has armor piercing and a long range as well. The heavy pulse rifle gives you armor piercing and full auto. The smart gun, which we've seen, of course, applied to great effect in the films. It's got armor piercing, full auto, and smart sight, which means when firing in full auto after aiming carefully, the second and third burst of the attack will also gain a bonus for aiming. 37A2 12 gauge pump action, which is a shotgun with short range, good modifier, good damage. We have an incinerator unit, which does fire damage and has a short range. If the special effect of fire effect is triggered, then if hurt, the target continues to burn with intensity 9 fire. Instead of hitting a specific target, the incinerator may be used to trigger intensity 9 fire in a zone. So you can set a zone on fire instead of burning an individual target. A single success is needed in the attack roll in that case. Got a harpoon gun, which has a harpoon effect. On a hit, the grappling hook attaches to the target. In 0G, if the target is heavier than you can use the tether to rappel quickly toward it, which is a full action and moves you to adjacent range. If you are heavier, you can instead pull the target towards you. Requires a strength roll from them if they resist. Then we have the phased plasma rifle with armor piercing and aim required. So you have to use a quick action to aim before you fire the gun. And then we have finally the M5A3 RPG launcher, which has very high damage. The weapon must be aimed carefully before it's fired. Lovely selection of weapons there, all different kinds of effects and usage possibilities packed into this incredibly tightly packed card box. The way I finally opened it, using a chopstick actually, and sticking it underneath, sort of squeezing it under this, just opening enough to fit the chopstick in there, and then gently pulling it open without ripping this whole thing apart, and then I snip these off. So the cards still stay in the box, as long as I don't shake the box around too much. But yeah, a little bit of trouble with that packaging, I have to say. We have the Free League Games catalog, which, you know, they make a lot of good games, so be careful. You may end up buying more stuff. Look at this. Then we have a lovely sheet of tokens here. So we got the Universal Supply dial. Oops, I just decided to do a runner. Now, this is assembled using these two bits and this sort of rotating counter here, which you put behind it, and then you clip these two together, and then you can count your resources that you're worried about at the moment. It could be air, ammunition, whatever. So really handy to have. Then you have various different tokens here. We have some aliens, we have some ships as well, we have some face huggers, we've got some baby aliens, and then we've got humans and androids, and some of them are NPCs, some of them are your PCs, so very handy again for over the table play. This was another bonus from the Kickstarter. As a backer in the first 48 hours, I got this USCSS Fidanza patch. It's got a lovely rainbow here, Weyland-Yutani logo. So I'm officially a member of the crew, I suppose, along with many thousands of other backers. Then we get into the actual contents at last. There's quite a bit in here to look at. So we have, first of all, this lovely getting started page. It tells you what to do. You should decide who should be the game mother, the GM. And if you've just opened this and you're the first one reading this, it's probably you. So be aware of that. Then read the rules and adventure booklets, familiarize yourself with the contents, let each player pick one of the pre-gens, and then get started. And then for further adventures, they say you should check out the core rulebook and the host of expansions that are available, and you can find these at the Free League web shop. The other thing I should mention is that the other expansion books for Colonial Marines and the Colony Building expansion book, both of those are getting the same redone layout as with the core rulebook. So I'm very much looking forward to that, in particular for the Colonial Marines book, which I felt was pretty much overloaded with text and not enough illustrations. It really lacked the sort of production value I associated with the game line to that point. The Colony Building expansion after that was much better in that regard. So hopefully with the redone Colonial Marines book, we'll get some really fancy, nice new artwork along with the much more readable layout. That's the starter page. Then you have your Rules Evolved Edition. It's a much thinner packet than you had in the original starter set, which was a 107-page perfect bound rulebook, which had a lot more of the base rules in it. So that's a little bit of a downgrade, but there's still more than enough in here to get you started. Then you got the Adventure, Hope's Last Day, which has been significantly beefed up. Then you have your rules reference cards. So there are 5 of these. So these can be passed out to the players. And this gives you a great idea of how the rules are laid out in the new textual style here. There's a lot of these lovely flow charts that make things really clear. So on the skill roll, grab your base dice equal to attribute plus skill. Modify that based on difficulty, the gear you have, and if anybody's helping you. Add your stress dice to the pool. Roll everything. If you roll no successes, you fail. You can push the roll. Then you add 1 to your stress and re-roll. If you roll 1 or more successes, however, you succeed. To get more successes, you can push the roll, which adds, again, a stress level, and you re-roll. If you roll a face hugger on 1 or more stress dice, trigger a stress response. Then they talk about actions in combat rounds. So each round you can perform 1 full action, 1 quick action, or 2 quick actions. They give you the examples of full action, so an attack in close combat, a ranged combat, combat, jump or climb, take full cover, interact with the terminal, use machinery, give first aid, clearing a jammed weapon, persuading someone, give orders, or drive a vehicle, and they give you which skill to use except for taking full cover, which you can just do with movement. Quick actions involve moving into an adjacent zone, moving between short and adjacent range, moving to a door or hatch and peeking through, lock a door or hatch, take partial cover, defend against a close combat attack. They have an exclamation mark because these are reactions. Aim and range attack, dodge a range attack, reload a weapon, pick up an item from the ground, or rally a broken character. Then on the back side, we have how a panic roll works. You roll a d6, add your stress level, subtract your resolve from your character sheet, and check panic response table. And so the higher your stress goes, it'll start to overwhelm your resolve, and you'll get these different results from keeping cool, 1 or less, to being spooked, noisy, twitchy, lose item, paranoid, freeze, seek cover, scream, flee, frenzy, and catatonic from 12 plus. Then we have also the stealth sequence laid out, which was another area of rules confusion in the initial game. So you have PCs move one zone. If they come within sight of an NPC, they make a passive open opposed observation roll. For a group, the highest roll counts. If one side wins, they can reveal themselves or hide. If it's a tie, draw initiative and start combat. If one side wins, they can also choose to ambush the enemy or back out the way they came. Then, in the next step, the NPCs will move one zone on the GM's own map. Xenomorphs move one zone per point of speed, so they move very quickly. If they come within sight of a PC, make a passive open opposed observation roll as above. A new stretch begins. If the PCs act first, then the NPCs as per steps 1 and 2 above. So that clarifies the whole sequence, makes it much easier to understand. So give these out to your players. They'll have all the ingredients that they really need. Oh, and we have the stress response. So when you see on the flowchart here that you roll a facehugger, then you need to trigger a stress response on this table, d6 plus stress level minus resolve, and you get these results which don't go as extreme as a panic roll. You get keeping cool, jumpy, tunnel vision, aggravated, shakes, frantic, deflated, and mess up. So it's only when you hit panic that you really get crazy stuff happening. A little bit more lenient in that respect, but don't worry, plenty of characters will still die. Then you have your lovely pre-generated characters. These are not as nice as the pre-gens in the original set. They're just nice matte paper, but previous ones had this kind of laminated vibe going on. Felt a little bit more high-end. It felt like a corner's been cut there a little bit. We still have some nice NPC artwork here. This is Janice McWhirr, a survey team leader. She has a personality of impatient. And then we have her full details on the back. You can see the new design of the character sheets. So she's got a career as an officer. She's got the talent field commander, so she can use the command skill to give orders in combat as a quick action instead of a full action. She has a buddy and a rival. She has no experience points or story points yet. That's your job. She's got her ratings for each of the 4 attributes: strength, agility, wits, and empathy. Different ratings in certain skills. So she's very heavily loaded on the empathy side. Command, manipulation, medical aid with a 5. High dice pools here. Wit, she's pretty good. 4 plus a 2 in observation. Agility, pretty poor with a 2 and only a 2 in range combat. And strength, she's not really focused on at all. Then you've got your stress level. You can tick up here. You can tick any stress and panic responses that you're dealing with currently. Then you mark her health out of 3, or if she's fatigued, resolve and radiation, which can affect that. She's got some tiny items, a signature item, which is a company ID badge, and a gear, including a motion tracker and a Seegson PDAT, which is giving her command +1. And she's got no armor and no weapons. No critical injuries or mental trauma either. We have Morgan Hurst, security officer. He's age 49 and religious. Now you'll see the differences here. He's much more focused on strength with big die rolls for close combat, heavy machinery, and stamina. Agility at 4 with range combat at 3, so he's a good shooter. Wits and empathy very much de-emphasized here. He gets 5 health, got a resolve of 3, and he carries an M4A3 service pistol, and he's got a reload as well under his gear. So he does have a little bit of firepower to start with, whereas McWhirr does not. Then we have Hannah Singleton, a tractor driver. She's self-sufficient, age 32. She has a decent strength at 4 with close combat, a very good agility with 5, plus mobility, piloting, and range combat all filled out. Good observation skills and not much else, and empathy is sort of middling with no skill points. Health of 5, got a knife, and that's about it. And she's got her tiny comm unit and personal data transmitter, and signature item, a toy dinosaur. Then we've got Sonny Sig, science officer. He's 29 and curious. He's got, of course, his buddies and rivals. His agility and wits are both at 4, but wits, he has a lot of skill points in Comtech, observation, and survival. So he's going to be good at techie type stuff and also good at medical aid with a 4 in empathy and a 2 in medical aid as well. And we have the usual markers. He has less health than the strength focused characters or agility focused characters, but he brings with him a med kit to help heal people, his comm transmitter, of course, and a seismic survey charge, which can do some damage. And then finally we have Holroyd the mechanic. He's got a buddy and a rival. He's got a 7 in strength and a 6 in agility, and that's because he's an android. They can have much higher levels of strength and whatnot because they are machines, not simple human beings. And he's got 7 health as well. He carries a cutting torch as a means of damage, no signature item, and some comm units. His talent is resilient, so when you roll for strength with attribute only anytime you suffer damage, and it doesn't count as an action, for every success you roll, you eliminate 1 point of damage. So he's real tough. And I forgot to read the talents for the others. So Sunny Sig has xenomorphology. When facing any kind of extraterrestrial creature of any kind, you may make an observation roll, quick action. If successful, you realize potential weakness of the creature, if it has any. If you fail, gain stress +1, only 1 attempt per xenomorph is allowed. Then Hannah Singleton has reckless. You may take +1 stress level before making a skill roll before pushing, and then you push the roll normally, gaining another +1 stress level. Then we have Overkill. For Morgan Hurst, security officer, when you roll a 9 or higher on a panic roll, you can ignore the result and instead go into overkill. All other PCs in the same zone must make an immediate panic roll. While in overkill, you must attack your enemies on every turn and you cannot take cover, dodge, or defend yourself. This effect stops when you or all your enemies in sight are broken. Instead of firing at random, you go into focused turbo kill mode with total disregard for your own safety, and everybody else freaks out. Then we have our field commander talent that we already talked about for Miss McWhirr, the survey team leader. Then we have our little map of Hadley's Hope. So we've got offices and housing, we've got a landing platform, loading platform, fire control, air traffic control, got some walls here. We have an atmosphere processor down that way. We have lots of interesting locations within. Just a handy small overview map. Then we have our big size maps here, which as usual will be a little bit difficult to show you, but we have the Stars of the Middle Heavens, as they're referred to here, courtesy of Weyland-Yutani Corp. So this is charted space as it's known in 2183. You can see again, we have a change in visual style here a little bit. Everything is nice and readable. We have a simple legend on the side, just over here, which shows you the political affiliation of each of the shaded regions on the main map. You have the Independent Core System Colonies, the Three World Empire, Anglo-Japanese Arm, the Union of Progressive Peoples, the United Americas, and the Frontier, which where nobody's in control. So these are all the star systems that have some sort of importance. And we have the core systems around here, the Outer Veil, the Outer Rim territories, and then we have the Frontier beyond that. A really nice dandy map. It's in the main book as well, but it's of course always nice to have a full-sized Free League style map on this beautiful heavy coated paper. On the flip side, we have an image of Hadley's Hope on the inside, and these are really well done. You can see so much lovely detail in here. Even the little storage rooms are different from each other. You've got freight elevators, you've got offices, survey offices, geolabs, storage areas. You got all the corridors laid out here. You got a med lab, operations room, surgery room. Up top there's the surgery room. Then we have a morgue, of course, with some storage for bodies. Got life support and power, storage, and station maintenance, plus another freight elevator. Lovely detail on all of this. It's really engaging just to look at this map, so very fun to use. We have yet more maps to go. So here we have, this appears to be a inset map of Hadley's Hope. So again, we've got lovely detail, got little bits and bobs scattered around, little bits of rubbish, and even you can see the toilets up here, some desks where people were doing some gambling and stuff. So it seems to be kind of a leisure zone. On the flip side, we have an exterior view of a small spacecraft. We've got the exterior there, and inside you can see it's got a few EVA suits, a couple of pilot seats, and the captain here, and then some storage with a rack, bathroom, and so forth, and an airlock at the back. That's very cool. And then we have one more, which is a smaller map again. So this here we have level 1 and level 2 of Hadley's Hope, so a smaller reference map, and it has more annotations here for the use of the GM, so I won't show you that for too long. And likewise, we have more inset maps here and another smaller version of the spacecraft as well. So lots and lots of materials that help make the adventure feel jam-packed and exciting. I do wish that the character sheets had that laminated vibe from 1E, but since I'm going digital anyway, it doesn't really matter. The rules reference cards are great, and they highlight right from the get-go most important rules changes that you find in the game. Now we'll just briefly flick through the adventure. I'm not going to really show you the detail here because obviously it's more fun to discover it. But again, you'll see this lovely layout, everything highly visible and readable, nice maps, details on all the keyed locations. You've got interesting places to go and people to meet. You've got final horrors, you've got xenomorph combat rules, drone attacks, and it's all pretty packed. I mean, it's only 20 pages long, but there's plenty here to keep you entertained for at least a couple of nights of entertainment with your friends, and definitely enough to decide whether Alien is a game that you would enjoy digging into further. Now we have the rules basic set here. So they mention the two main modes of play, which we share again with the first edition. Cinematic play, where you emulate the dramatic arc of an Alien film, designed to be played in a single or a few sessions. So you have high stakes, fast and brutal play. Most of your PCs probably won't live to see the end of the adventure. A short but complete 3-act cinematic adventure, Hope's Last Day, is included in the starter set. Now, campaign play is designed for longer, continuous play with the same cast of characters over several sessions, and there are some campaign frameworks presented in the main rulebook that can help you decide how to run different types of campaigns. Role-playing Alien, so each player will take control of a PC. You could be a colonist, a space trucker, a marine, or something else, and you decide what they do, of course. They describe a little bit more about the core rulebook, which has the rules for creating characters, more gear, vehicles, and spaceships, more xenomorphs, a trove of information about the Alien universe, and a host of other resources for campaign play. And then beyond the core rulebook, you have many cinematic adventures and campaign sourcebooks. Most of these components of this starter set, like the dice, the star map, etc., are still useful after having completed the starter scenario, and that's really important. All these components here, the extras, are broadly useful beyond just playing Hope's Last Day. Talk about the role of the game mother, safety tools, again, which on a long-established table you probably won't need, but if you're playing with newbies, you might want to go through if there's any sort of horror that they're not particularly comfortable with, because this is a horror game. There will be blood and grossness and people having aliens explode out of their torsos. Then we talk about the player characters. Character sheets, they have their 4 attributes, as we mentioned: strength, agility, wits, and empathy. And they have their skills, each of which is linked to an attribute. Then you have your talents, which are tricks, moves, and minor abilities that give you an edge. So your resolve is a numerical rating equal to your wits plus empathy scores divided by 2, rounded up. So the greater your wits and empathy, the more resolve you'll have against extreme pressure and stress. But even if you keep your nerves in check, you have to worry about your health. So your health, as we've seen, is generally pretty small, ranging from 3 to 7, and that was for the Android with a 7. If you get reduced to 0, you're broken and might die. Your starting maximum health is your strength plus agility divided by 2, rounding up again. Then you have your personal agenda. Each of the 3 acts of the adventure, you get a new handout with a new agenda for your character for the act. At the end of each act, the GM will evaluate the actions of each PC. If you took any actions to further your agenda, you're awarded 1 story point. If you have any story points left after the end of the cinematic adventure, you may bring 1 story point to the next adventure with the same group, even if you're playing a different PC. It's pretty cool. Now, there is the chance of player versus player happening, because sometimes you'll end up in direct confrontation over your hidden agendas. So the players involved will play out a conflict when the GM is called PvP, or player versus player. If the PC who has turned traitor is still alive, then they become an NPC and is from now on under the control of the GM. So once your secret agenda is out and you resolve the combat, if you survive, you then carry on as a nemesis. You really want to think carefully about, if you have an agenda that goes against the common interest of the group, you need to be very careful about when you implement that. If there are people around who will call you on it and you get to a conflict, that could end up you being clearly marked as a nemesis, taken out of your control, and you'd have to play somebody else. So you're strongly recommended to wait until the final act of the adventure to really put your plans into motion, because drastic things could happen. Then we have your gear. Encumbrance is pretty easily tracked in this game. You can carry a number of regular sized items, which are weight 1 in the gear list, equal to double your strength rating without problems. And a regular item takes up 1 row on your character sheet. Heavy items or bulky items count as 2 or more regular items and thus take up several rows on your character sheet. At the opposite end, light items count as a half or even a quarter of a regular item, as we saw with a reload for a pistol is only a quarter of an item, so you can have a bunch of those. Tiny items are so small they don't affect your encumbrance at all. That's things like your personal communicators and stuff. If you're over encumbered, you can temporarily carry up to twice your normal encumbrance, i.e. strength times 4, but when you're doing so, your stress increases 1 step every time you move in a stretch of stealth mode or a round of combat. Then we have your supply dial talked about here. So in the world of Alien, you need to not just overcome xenomorphs, but you have worries about lack of air, ammo, and power. And these are all called consumables. And sometimes you'll need to make a supply roll for your gear. So that means rolling a number of stress dice equal to the current air, ammo, or power rating up to a maximum of 6. For every facehugger you roll, supply rating of the item is decreased by 1. Air supply is not worried about in this starter set because you're indoors. Most firearms have ammo, however. After you're firing, you make a supply roll, and when your ammo runs out, you need to reload. Power, some items will require electricity, as indicated by the item description, so you'll need to make a supply roll if it needs power, and if you run out of power, it can't function anymore until you refresh it. With NPCs, so the GM should avoid making supply rolls for them because of the excessive dice rolling that would cause. Instead, the NPC supply rating will simply be reduced by 1 step each time you would normally make a supply roll. If it's dramatically appropriate, though, if it'd make the scene more fun, then go ahead and do it. Then the main mechanic is making your skill rolls. So we saw that in the flowchart on the rules reference. You take your base dice and your skill dice, then you have the panic dice that you add in. So the cinematic adventure here tells you when a roll should be done, but the GM is also free to call for a roll in a situation that you feel warrants it. You don't want to roll too much, however, because you really want the rolls to be dramatic and have some definite consequence. If it's a relatively minor action or not being taken under extreme pressure, then just let these people pass it because they are skilled and trained in what they do. You need at least 1 6 in order to succeed. If you have a stress level of 1 or higher, add this number of stress dice to the pool, and if you roll a facehugger on 1 or more stress dice, you suffer a stress response. If you don't have the skill required, you can roll anyway. You just roll the attribute as well as your stress dice and ignore adding any skill dice. So not having skill means you just don't have that added to your pool. Simple enough. So you can have modifiers as well from the rules of the GM that can add or remove base dice for your pool, and you can never go below 1 base die, however, and modifiers never affect stress dice. They're always going to be the same as your stress level. Gear can modify your roll, but not always. Sometimes a specific item is needed just to do an action at all. Then there's helping. So each person that's helping you gives you +1 die, but they need to be in a position to actually support your action in a concrete way. In combat, helping someone uses up your full action for the round, so think carefully about that. The more successes you roll, the better the result. In combat, it usually means more damage, but you can also get some bonus effects. The adventure text of the GM has final say on what your extra successes can be used for. They also note that sometimes you need to roll things like a D3 or D66 or whatever. D3 means you roll D6 and divide the result by 2, rounding up, and D66 you roll 2 D6s and consider the first die as the 10s and the second one as the 1s. That gives you a result between 1 and 66. And here we have again the flow chart for the skill roll and an example of skill modifiers and helping. Then we have failure. So the GM will tell you if you fail on your roll and what that means. And you can push your roll if you don't want to deal with that. You get 1 more stress immediately and roll that in your reroll. Then you reroll all dice not showing a success. Count all the dice after the reroll, including the ones not rerolled. If you rolled 1 or more facehuggers on stress dice in the initial roll, you cannot push the roll. You have a rule as well that you can only push a roll once unless you have a talent that allows you to push a roll a second time. So they give an example of that, and then dealing with NPCs and skills. NPCs never push rolls, and they don't have a stress level. The GM will roll dice for the NPCs, but they should only roll for things that affect the PCs directly. Now, stress response. This is where we get into the horror aspects. If you roll a facehugger on 1 or more stress dice, then a stress response is triggered. You roll a d6, add your stress level, and subtract your resolve, and then check it out on the table below. You have custom cards for all lasting stress responses in the box set, which is handy. In a cinematic adventure, you can spend a story point to automatically get a success on 1 base die in a skill roll. This can be done before or after pushing the roll. And you gain your story points, of course, by following the personal agenda, but you can never have more than 3 story points at once. And then we have our definitions of the different results. Keeping cool means nothing happens. We have jumpy, tunnel vision, aggravated, shakes, frantic, deflated, we've all seen, and mess up means your action fails regardless of the successes you rolled, and you gain another stress as a result. So that's a pretty bad one. But it's not an ongoing condition, it's just a one-off, so we don't get a card for that. We have passive rolls, so sometimes the GM will ask you to roll for something you're not even aware of, typically observation rolls in stealth mode. You can't push them or get stress responses from them. You still add your stress level though. The GM can even make some passive rolls in secret. Opposed rolls, when you're facing an active resistance to your skill roll, you need to roll off against your opponent. So you need to roll more successes than your opponent to succeed. You can push the roll even if you're the target of an opposed roll, but you don't use these very often. If you're doing player versus player, then the active PC will decide whether to push the roll first. If so, they re-roll, then the passive PC will decide whether to push or not in response. In open rolls, you have opposed rolls where there is no clear active party, then a tie means there's no clear winner of the roll. If this doesn't work in the narrative, then you want to break the tie in some way randomly, using another d6 roll off or something like that. And they give a nice example of opposed rolls here. Then we have how space and time are measured. We use a zone-based system in the Alien RPG, and that's preserved here. You can use tokens or miniatures, and maps are divided into zones, typically a room or a corridor, and the zone borders are indicated on the adventure maps, which are the smaller maps in the box set, which are at a larger scale. So zones can be cluttered or open. So if it's cluttered, it means there's stuff to hide behind. Open zones don't have such things, and they'll usually be corridors and crawl spaces or big empty rooms. And the Hope's Last Day Adventure indicates which zones have which property. A border between two adjacent zones is either open or blocked by a wall or a bulkhead, and a blocked border can have a door or a hatch, allowing movement between the two zones. Corridors and crawl spaces are divided into several zones by doors or lines on the map. Line of sight, so except for characters who are hiding or in full cover, everyone in the same zone has line of sight to each other. Unless you're in something very narrow like an air shaft, then other characters block line of sight, including friendly characters. Open zone borders don't block line of sight. A blocked border generally blocks line of sight even if there is a door or a hatch, unless you're actively holding a door open or peeking through. Then we have 5 different range categories, which are in the diagram here. So they range from adjacent, in your face, short in the same zone, medium, adjacent zone, long, up to 4 zones away, and extreme is even farther. And we saw that some of the weapons had ranges of E listed for things like the sniper rifle, so you could really ping off a round at somebody very far away down a corridor if you want to. Measuring time, so a round is what you use in combat, and they last roughly 5 to 10 seconds. If you are dealing with stretches, when you're moving in stealth through an uncertain environment, then you're doing stretches of 5 to 10 minutes, and a shift is 5 to 10 hours, so that you would think about if you're doing major repairs to a ship or a station, etc. So stealth mode is a big deal in this game, and always has been, but it's laid out much more straightforwardly in this edition, which I like. So PC movement is slow and careful because you're not sure what's out there in the dark. In one stretch of time, your character can move into an adjacent zone on the map, assuming the border is open or you've got a door. You scan for enemies and get a superficial description of the zone from the GM. You can move individually or as a group, and the order in which you move you can choose by yourself. You can search something in a zone, but you may need to stay several stretches or even a full shift, depending on what the adventure text or the GM says. Now, NPC movement is handled in secret by the GM each stretch after your PCs have moved. Human NPCs follow the same rules as PCs, while xenomorphs may move one zone per point of speed, so they're super fast. The adventure text may tell the GM that enemies are active or passive. Active enemies are moving around the map, stalking you or trying to hide from you. Passive enemies don't know you're there and generally are just sort of hanging out, stationary, unless they've been alerted to your presence by you being loud or doing something stupid. So the GM should use a hidden map, hidden from view by the boxed lid or GM screen if you have it, and there you move the NPC tokens hidden from the player's view. So crawl spaces can run by the side of rooms and corridors, above them or underneath them. They'll have access points and be marked on the map. They can be sealed shut with a cutting torch, and that's described in the adventure booklet. And one of the characters, of course, has a cutting torch, so it's handy. Now, the detection is where things get crazy. So if you come within line of sight of an NPC while you're in stealth mode or vice versa, you make a passive open opposed observation roll. That means the roll can't be pushed nor trigger stress responses. The GM will just ask you to roll observation without telling you why, and then roll for the NPC. Whoever wins, they spot the other first. They can choose to declare their presence, ambush their opponent, hide in the zone, or back out of the zone the same way they came. Backing out is done immediately and does not count towards the normal movement in this stretch. On a tied roll, you spot each other at the same time and you draw initiative. There's an option for keeping guard, so if you remain stationary in a zone for a stretch and do nothing but keeping guard, you get +2 dice to observation rolls to anything coming within your line of sight. And here again we have the stealth sequence laid out very nicely in this flowchart. Then we have darkness, so in zones with very dim lighting, observation rolls for humans and androids are made with -2. Xenomorphs are not affected, of course. A flashlight will remove that effect. Groups in stealth mode, when you're moving as a group, all characters in each group get to roll observation, but only the best roll for each side counts. If you have identical stats, the GM will just make a single observation roll if they're NPCs and apply the results to the whole group. A character can hide in a cluttered zone, but not an open zone. To hide carefully takes one stretch and thus cannot be combined with movement or searching the zone, except immediately after a 1 observation roll when you are within line of sight of an enemy. In this specific case, only hiding is free. Items can also be hidden in a zone. They give a nice example of stealth mode here. Finding what's hidden, so when an enemy enters a zone with a hidden character, no opposed observation roll is made. Instead, the enemy must actively search the zone for a stretch and make an observation roll. If they fail, another roll can be made each stretch. If a hidden character is found, draw initiative. If several characters search the zone at the same time, they can make separate rolls or let one character roll and the others help. A hidden character may, at their turn in the stretch, take action to move out of the zone, interact with something, or ambush the enemy. In all cases, you make an opposed observation roll against all enemies in line of sight. Then you got your motion trackers. So you can use these once per stretch. This does not exclude other activities during the stretch, but before the tracker gives any information, a power supply roll must be made. If it's still powered, you'll automatically detect the presence of all NPCs within its range, which is 4 zones for an M314, even if not within line of sight. So you'll get that nice ping that you get in the movies on a little screen, which can read even through walls. NPCs who remain stationary, however, are not detected because they detect motion, not just mere presence. Tracker ping. So when you get a ping of movement from a motion tracker, you can place ping tokens on the map. That's what you get on the side here. You have these motion tracker ping tokens, and you can then flip them over when they get fully detected and say, oh god, it's an alien, or, a baby alien, or a face hugger, or whatever it is. Now, if you spot an NPC or vice versa, stealth mode is over, and you draw your initiative cards. Draw initiative even if the NPC is not obviously hostile, so that forces PCs who act first to decide whether to attack or to wait for them to say something. You can also exchange initiative with NPCs or each other on their turn, using the holding off action. You can also initiate combat with an ambush, so you get a surprise turn. If you stop to interact socially with NPCs or just stop to relieve stress or chat, stealth mode stops. You estimate as a GM how many stretches pass during that time, and you move NPCs on the hidden stealth map accordingly. Social mode can also be used when you perform a task that takes more than a stretch to complete. Once you start moving around again, though, you're back in stealth mode. Quote there, "You weren't always an asshole, Gorman," from Private Vasquez. Then we have combat. They note that you play this out in rounds, 5 to 10 seconds long, as we saw before. And to determine initiative, you have your 10 cards, which you draw at random. Each player in the fight draws a random card, and the GM draws cards for the NPCs. And the number determines the order you act, so starting with card 1 and moving up from there. Your place in the initiative order is called your turn. Your previous turn or your next turn can occur in the current round or the previous next round, depending on if you've had your turn in the current round yet. So bear that in mind when effects come into play that talk about previous turn or your next turn. They should tell you to place your initiative card by your character sheet, or at least, have it handy, and that way everybody can see the order in which each person acts. If you're playing online, you can just stick it in the chat or make an initiative chart on Roll20 or whatever you need to do. The GM will put their card or cards in front of them, and once everybody has had their turn, the round is over, and a new round begins by drawing initiative again. So initiative changes each round to keep things interesting. Now, xenomorphs have a speed rating and get 1 turn and initiative card per point of speed, so they can act more than once in a round. If combat starts off with an attack that the GM deems to be surprising, the attacker automatically gets the number 1 initiative card. The other combatants draw their initiative from the cards that remain. With several attackers, they get the lowest, earliest cards to distribute freely. At the end of the second round, everyone draws the initiative as usual. A special type of surprise attack is an ambush, which is an attack on an unaware opponent, and that's usually the result of doing well in stealth mode. That gives you the lowest, earliest initiative card to the attackers and gives +2 dice to the initial attacks, and the targets cannot defend or dodge. So an ambush is very powerful. Then you have your holding off action. You can choose to hold off and swap initiative cards and therefore places in the turn order with another PC or NPC group whose turn comes after yours. They can't refuse the trade and have to take their turn immediately. You cannot swap initiative cards, obviously, with someone who's already gone. All the rules effects that are triggered on your turn, like death rolls, are happening in the turn order when the initiative cards are swapped. Your turn doesn't happen until you actually move to your place in the order. Then you have interrupt actions, which we saw marked with this exclamation mark, Metal Gear Solid style. So these are quick actions that occur out of turn, like defending or dodging. They're not affected by holding off. Spent quick actions still count as spent even if you get a new initiative number. Even if you spent 2 quick actions as interrupt actions earlier in the round and thus don't get any action on your turn, you can still hold off and swap cards when your turn comes. When swapping cards with Xenomorph, you decide which card you want, as long as it comes after your current turn. Then we have your basic summary of actions. So each round you can get 1 full action or 1 quick action, or 2 quick actions. They give you the list of full actions and quick actions. The important thing to note here was it's sort of alluded to in the interrupt action segment above. You can do quick actions out of your turn to defend against close combat attack or dodge the ranged attack. Those take up quick actions on your actual turn. So if you take 2 quick actions to defend during the initiative order, but before your actual turn comes up, then you forfeit your turn. All actions are reset at the start of a new round, and you can't save them from one round to the next. So you always have the same action distribution each round, but the initiative will change. Some other different actions you can do. So giving orders. As a full action, you can bark orders to another character if they can hear you, even via comms. You roll for command, and for every success, they get +1 die to 1 roll later in the same round, but only if they're carrying out your order. Foot movement. You can spend a quick action to go from one zone to an adjacent zone, to move up to a door or hatch to peek through it, or take cover by it, or to move between short and adjacent range from a character inside your current zone. Doors or hatches. You can pass an unlocked door or hatch during movement without spending an action, but locking a door or hatch is a quick action. A locked door or hatch can be broken broken down, requiring a close combat attack full action with +2 dice. A typical metal door or hatch has armor 2. It can take 10 points of damage before it gives in. Electronically locked doors or hatches can be opened with a Comtech roll as a full action. You can also block another character from moving past you. You can block a cylindrical volume 2 meters wide and equally tall. To pass you, your opponent must either take you out or make a special close combat action. Blocking is not mandatory. You can allow friendly characters to pass you, of course. Then they talk about marking your actions using token miniatures. Then we have crawl spaces in which you can't move past other characters at all. Xenomorphs often prefer to move through air shafts, but can move through rooms and corridors just like humans, including opening unlocked doors. You can drag a broken or otherwise immobilized person with you when you move. They need to be at adjacent range, and you need to make a stamina roll. If you fail, you remain in the zone, stuck trying to drag this lump with you. You can attempt to leave a combat before it's over by moving out of sight of your opponents. If you can do that and it's not obvious where you would have gone, then your opponents will have to roll for observation, not costing an action, try and understand where you went. If they fail, then the combat is over and you're back in stealth mode. Then we get into close combat. It's always an attack at adjacent range, no matter what weapon is used. So full action, you roll for close combat to hit, and weapons give you a modifier to your roll, which you see on the reference cards. If you hit, you get the weapon's base damage, plus 1 damage for every success that you roll beyond the first. Damage can be reduced by body armor, and unarmed attacks have a base damage of 1. Against an armored target, you can aim for a weak spot for -2 dice on your initial roll, but if you hit, the armor level is reduced 1 step after reduction for an armor-piercing attack. If you're in close combat, you can choose to defend yourself to avoid being hit. As a quick action, you roll for close combat. You must state that you defend before the attacker rolls. Defending turns the attack roll into an opposed roll. For each success you roll when you're defending, you eliminate 1 success roll with the attacker. So this is an interrupt action where it occurs out of turn, but it takes one of your quick actions. So if you fear you'll be attacked later in a round, it might be wise to save quick action for a possible defense. Then you have special attacks. You must state you're doing this before you roll your dice, and you can't use any bonus dice from a weapon. So you can do things like disarming someone. You can try to pass by an enemy, and if you're successful, you place your token on the other side. So that's how you pass somebody who's using blocking movement. A lovely flowchart here about how all that works for close combat. You can also shove somebody and push your opponent to short range from you, and that can be used to shove your target through a door or hatch. You can also grapple somebody, and that means your enemy can't move or perform any actions except trying to break free, which is a full action and an opposed close combat roll against you. Xenomorphs use mobility instead. If your close combat opponent is restrained or unaware, they cannot defend themselves, and you get +2 dice to the roll. You can use a firearm even in close combat. You still use the close combat skill. As most firearms have a minimum range of short, you typically get -2 dice or more. Your target can defend against the attack normally. Then you get ranged combat. So we've got a nice little list of modifiers here. So if you use a quick action for aim, you get +2. If you're below your minimum range, you get -2 per band below your minimum range. If you get your target in partial cover, -2. Target in full cover, -3. If you're aiming for a weak spot to get around armor, that's -2. And then we have your final example of close combat up there. And move to ranged. So you roll for ranged combat, of course, and you'll need a ranged weapon. Most ranged weapons will give you some kind of modifier to your roll. And if the attack succeeds, you'll get the weapon's base damage plus 1 damage for every success beyond the first, but that can be reduced by armor once again. So you get +2 if you spend your time with a quick action to aim. You can only do that at short range or more, and it must happen immediately before your attack. So that's your whole turn done if you're using aiming. So if you're using one of those big weapons that require aiming, then you won't be able to defend yourself during that turn, so bear that in mind. You won't have any quick actions left. Weak spot works the same as with close combat. So you get -2 dice, and on a hit you reduce the armor level by 1. Now, the interrupt action for ranged combat is dodging. This is a quick action. You roll for mobility. You can only dodge if you know of the attacker, and you must declare it before they roll. And again, this turns it into an opposed roll. So each success you roll when dodging, you eliminate 1 success roll by the attacker. You can also seek cover. You can only take cover, though, in a cluttered zone. If you're in an open zone, you can only get cover by a door or hatch, which gives you cover against enemies in the adjacent zone. Partial cover is a quick action. You expose enough of yourself to be able to see and shoot, and you get -2 to attack rolls against you, and you can dodge when you're in partial cover. In full cover, you're completely hiding yourself from view. It's a full action. You break line of sight. So range attacks are all still possible, but get -3 dice, and the attacks must penetrate the barrier. You can't dodge when you're in full cover. If you fire at a target adjacent to another character and miss, you risk hitting the unintended target instead. Oops. You roll for an attack with 2 base dice, inflicting base damage if 1 success is rolled, and 1 additional damage on 2 successes. If there are several adjacent targets, randomize which one is hit. And then you have your your ammo. So of course you need to roll supply rolls for that, and you deal with the ammo capacity of each individual weapon. And when they run out of supply rating, then you need to take a quick action to reload the firearm, and you need to track your available reloads on your character sheet. Single shot weapons, you have to reload them after every shot. There's no supply roll involved. For NPCs, they don't make ammo supply rolls. Instead, their capacity is reduced by 1 step for every attack, no matter what. Then they have a nice flowchart for your ranged combat attacks. We've got full auto. Some weapons can fire bursts of bullets. When you fire a burst and hit without pushing the roll, you can immediately make another attack roll at the same target or another as part of the same action. If you hit again without pushing, roll a third time. As soon as you miss or push a roll, the attack is over. Each attack roll except the first gives you stress level +1. You cannot make more than 3 attack rolls in a single burst. So that's the way full auto works. It's very handy. And when you fire a burst, you must make an ammo supply roll after each attack roll. If you're aiming carefully with a quick action before you attack, the bonus will only apply to the first attack of the burst. Then we have a flowchart for damage. As damage comes in, you reduce it by any armor level modified for armor piercing and weak spots. To increase your health by the resulting amount, if your health drops to 0, you're broken and can't do anything. When broken, immediately roll for a critical injury. If the critical injury is lethal, then you apply the effect to make a death roll for stamina after each indicated time limit is passed. You can't push the roll and you don't use any stress dice. If you're not having a lethal critical, then you just apply the effect. If you fail the death roll, you die if you get a lethal critical injury. If you succeed 3 death rolls, you stop making death rolls, and you're basically stabilized. Others at adjacent range can give you first aid with a medical aid roll, full action. If successful, you're stabilized. Stop making death rolls. If broken, you also recover 1 point of health per success rolled. If the roll fails, then your condition worsens, and the time limit is reduced 1 step. While broken, someone at adjacent range can give you first aid, and anyone in your zone can try to rally you with a command action. If they fail to rally you, no effect. If they succeed, you recover 1 point of health per success rolled, and you're no longer broken. You also recover 1 point of health per stretch of time, even if suffering from a critical injury. When you have 1 health or more, you are no longer broken. It seems complicated, all these words in here, but once you follow the logic, it's really easy to understand. I love these new flowcharts. They really help clarify the way things work. And they give you some more detail about how armor works, including the armor level of different kinds of common barriers, including furniture, inner bulkheads, outer bulkheads, and armored bulkheads. For barriers and vehicles, if the armor level is higher than the base damage rating of the weapon, the attack cannot breach the armor no matter how many success are rolled. If you're in full cover behind a barrier and wear body armor, first apply the effect of the cover, then the armor. Then talk about being broken. If you're broken but not dead and no one gives you first aid, you automatically get back up after 1 stretch and recover 1 point of health. As long as you're not fatigued, you automatically recover 1 health per stretch of time if you're resting in a safe area, even if you have a crit against you. First aid and rallying can only recover health when you're broken. So if you're reduced to 0 health, you roll a d6 on the table for a critical injury. It's a reduced table here for the starter set. Similar to how things work in the full game, but there's just more options. And we show an example of character death. So the death of a PC can be traumatic, but try not to see it as a failure. Consider it a dramatic peak in your story. In cinematic adventures, character deaths are quite common and can be very memorable. Good point of view to have for horror games in general, really. Death's going to happen. It's part of the genre, and it should be a dramatic moment. Note that there are some xenomorph signature attacks that kill you outright, by the way. If you roll any of these, you're dead. No death rolls, no chance of surviving. You're just dead. If you suffer critical injury 3 or worse, you are wounded. And they note here, of course, what I said before, that the core rulebook has a more comprehensive list of critical injuries. Then panic. So stress level. The mounting tension of your character is measured by your stress level, which starts at 0 and increases when you push rolls, you suffer certain stress or panic responses, the nearby NPC panics, you make a second or third attack roll in a burst of full auto fire, you become fatigued, remember if your own crew attacks you, or if you have an unnerving encounter. As long as you keep your stress in check, you can use it to your advantage. But if the tension grows too strong, it can explode, sending you into a wild panic. You need to make a panic roll when you see another PC become broken, you see a horrifying xenomorph for the first time. A terrifying xenomorph comes within adjacent range, even if you've seen it before. You witness another PC suffer a certain panic response, or a truly horrifying event occurs separate from those. Then you roll on the panic table, add your stress level, subtract your resolve, and then check your panic response on the table here. And of course, we saw what that does looking at the cards before. If you're suffering from a panic response and are forced to make another one during that time, you suffer both responses if possible. If you can't combine them effectively in the narrative, then the higher response takes precedence. If you roll for your second panic response and you get the same result as the first, then instead use the next higher response on the table. So, pretty simple. Then stopping panic. So some panic responses are immediate or last until your next turn. Otherwise, it keeps going until either somebody within speaking range makes a command roll, until you're broken, or until a full stretch passes. For every stretch you spend resting in a safe area, your stress level is reduced by 1 point. In addition, 1 stress response of your choice is removed for each stress level reduced. You can't make skill rolls when resting, though. And if your rest is interrupted by an alien or something else, it doesn't count. Panic roll can also decrease stress if you get a low enough result. There are other hazards, of course, so fatigue. If you don't get enough air, hot water, food, or sleep, or if you're exposed to extreme cold or heat without protection, you make survival rolls at regular intervals, and as soon as you fail, you become fatigued. And there's a little box in your character sheet we saw. That means you can't recover health anymore. You must continue to make survival rolls at the same intervals. For each failed roll, you suffer 1 point of damage and gain +1 stress. If broken by damage from fatigue, don't roll for a critical injury. Instead, make death rolls at the same intervals as the survival rolls. First aid has no effect. Only removing the source of the fatigue will stop the death rolls. So if somebody's freezing to death, you need to get them to warmth before they can even think about recovering. Falling on a hard surface in gravity is also bad. You automatically get an amount of damage to you equal to the height of the fall in meters divided by 2. Rounding fraction is down. In a controlled jump roll mobility, each success roll reduces the damage done by 1, but body armor doesn't help you. Some weapons have an explosive effect. If you fire these normally and you hit your target, then all the other characters in the same zone, PCs and NPCs alike, will suffer the same damage. Every target can try to dodge the attack separately. If your attack misses, the shot is assumed to have gone astray and hurts no one. For the primary target, cover has the same effect as any other ranged attack. Secondary targets and partial cover count as if they were in full cover. If you fire an explosive weapon into a zone with only blocked borders, you get +2 dice to the attack. Then you have fire. So fire typically covers one zone and is measured by its intensity. Typical fire has intensity 6 to 9. When entering a burning zone or starting a round in one, roll a number of base dice equal to the intensity. For every success rolled, you suffer 1 point of damage. Armor has a normal effect. So in fire 9, intensity came from the flamethrower. It's pretty strong. It means you roll 9 dice. If you take damage from a fire attack, you catch fire and start to burn, suffering another fire attack at the start of each new round, even if you leave the burning zone. As soon as the fire attack outside the burning zone inflicts no damage, you're no longer on fire. You or a friend at adjacent range can stop you from burning with a successful mobility roll, which is a full action. And for a typical fire, you roll a d6 at the start of each round. On a 1 to 2, the fire goes out. On a 3 to 4, it continues to burn in the same zone. On a 5 to 6, the fire spreads to a random adjacent zone if the border is open and there's flammable stuff in that zone. Then we get to the role of synthetics in combat, which is interesting. So they act like humans and make skill rolls normally, but there are some differences. They generally have higher attribute levels, as we saw. They can't push skill rolls and they don't suffer stress. They don't have a stress level and they may never make panic rolls. If you get to 0 health as an android, you don't roll for a critical injury. Instead, roll for critical systems damage on the table below. Then we have your list of weapons that are available in the scenario. Then we have our additional items, diagnostics and displays with their effect, vision devices, tools, and medical supplies. So there you go. That is Hope's Last Day. It's not quite as hefty as the starter set for 1E, which is a bit of a shame. And like I say, the character sheets are not as cool, but it does have a much better layout. I think the rules are nice and tight and easy to learn. It's more functional as a quick blast to see, will my group take to this game, or will it be a massive flop? Well, this is an easy way to tell, so it's worth giving a go. And it's always a good value, these starter sets, because you get all these cool cards, you get a miniature now as well, and you get all these dice, which by themselves cost almost as much as the starter set anyway. So you might as well just get the whole thing. The dice bag was for the Kickstarter. I'm not sure if they're selling those on the Free League website or not, but just kind of a cool thing to have. It's not essential, obviously. So that's the starter set, which is really the main way you're going to get introduced to Alien Evolved Edition if you're new. We'll take a quick look at Rapture Protocol so you can see what the cinematic adventures look like. You can see it's much thinner than the starter set because it doesn't have dice and all that other stuff. They note, as I mentioned, there's an RPG miniatures set for Rapture Protocol, which gives you 20 28mm miniatures, same scale as the Xenomorph in the starter set. And there's a Bible quote on this one: "Behold, I will make you a terror to yourself and to all your friends." Jeremiah 24. 3 to 5 players plus the game mother returns to the roots of the Alien franchise, featuring the crew of a small star freighter on a resupply run to the remote Jeremiah 6 industrial colony, soon embroiled in a deadly conflict. So you get a scenario book, a huge double-sided map featuring the star freighter USS Fidanza on one side, that's the one I got the crew patch for, and the Jeremiah 6 mining base on the other. 5 pre-gen characters, playing cards, cardboard tokens for characters and creatures, and player maps and handouts. So we'll take a quick look. Again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, so we won't look too closely. Here we have the cards, which thankfully didn't come in an insanely tight box. You got your personal agendas here, and you have some NPC cards as well. You got a little bit more meat to the scenario. And you have the ship's cat as an NPC, which I love. And he can take the purr action, which is fun. Then we have our Free League Games catalog, attempt to spend more money. And we have our token set. So there's more NPCs in this one. You can also see, of course, some scary xenomorph stuff happening. And on the flip side, we have our motion tracker pings. And we have the option of a robot suit battle, of course, which is always fun. Rapture Protocol Adventure book itself. You can see it's beefier than Hope's Last Day. There's more substance to this one. So we'll just quickly flick through. Again, encourage you to take a look at the miniatures if you're into that kind of thing. They give you a background to the scenario, how to kick off the action as the game mother. Then you get summaries of the NPCs you'll meet, some lovely artwork. We have xenomorphs. We have the USCSS Speranza, some details of it on a stats level. We have maps that are needed, the ship's cat, some more maps annotated for the GM. And we have what's going on in each of the blocks, some background stories, chest burster happening over there. So yeah, there's more going on in this scenario. It's significantly larger as well. It was 20 pages, I believe, for Hope's Last Day. And at the end here, we are up to 41 pages. And then straight to the back cover. So yeah, you'll get a few more sessions to play out of this one, which is nice. You also get some handouts here. So you have these lovely retro future style readouts on the Jeremiah 6 colony. We have Priority 1 alert. We have what you'll see on an interface in the mining facility of Jeremiah 6. We've got production logs. And there we are, back to the start. And then we have our lovely maps here. Take a look at these. There we go. So once again, we have a few different types of maps here, and we have our pre-gens. So here we have an overview of the Jeremiah 6 mining complex in this new layout style of the Evolved Edition, which is very nice. Nothing on the back. So this is a handout. You can give that to players. We have the positioning of Jeremiah 6 and where you'll end up landing the freighter, the USCSS Fidanza, the entrance to the mine, and the mining facility. You can see the scale at 100 meters there. That's not marked as a handout, but anyway, now you know what it is. We have different pre-gens this time. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, we have an exec officer, Benjamin York, and he's got a 4 in wits and empathy, so he's more of a commander type. You got frontline leader talent, +2 dice to command rolls to rally a broken character. That's handy. And he's just got a watch for survival +1. We have Isla Witt, navigation officer, good strength with a 4 and a 1 in close combat, great agility with strong piloting and range combat skills in particular, and she carries a combat knife and does the reckless talent, which we saw before. We have Martina Martinez. She is a company woman through and through with an excitable personality. She's also a science officer. She has the talent of analysis, so you can roll for observation to gain insight into alien artifacts or creatures that you examine. Success reduces the stress level of all the PCs in the same zone by 1, but failure increases their stress by 1. Her wits, of course, very high. At 5, she's got 3 in Comtech and 3 in observation. Not much for survival, though, but she can do a bit of medical aid, which is helpful. And she doesn't carry anything except the Siegson system diagnostic device for a +2 to Comtech. Then we have Eve Weiss, the medical officer, friendly and understanding, and you're well liked. Age 27. She has empathy of 5 with 3 medical aid, which is great. She's got good wits and observation. She has a surgical kit to help with her medical aid as well, so very much handy. Along with her talent of field medic, which gives her +2 dice when rolling for medical aid to give first aid. Then finally we have Dominic Jeffers, the engineer. He's boastful and 51, looks a bit grizzled. And he has the talent True Grit. He can push the roll for strength twice. Stress level +1 for each push. He's got very high strength, 5 for the overall attribute, 3 for close combat, 3 heavy machinery, 2 stamina. He's got 4 in agility, but no skills in that. He's got 2 for survival and empathy. He's not very empathetic at all. But he does have a maintenance jack for adjacent combat damage and a bit higher health, but not great resolve. So the maintenance jack can be used for heavy machinery +1 or close combat +1. So those are our new NPCs, very different from the Hope's Last Day scenario. That's part of the fun of these box sets for Alien, is you really feel like each one is like an entry in the Alien franchise. New group of people, new threats, new environments, all that kind of cool stuff. Now we have a big old map here. So this is the USCSS Fidanza, which may be difficult to see because of the strength of this aforementioned poster paper. Trust me, it says on top, this is the detailed deck plan of the USCSS Fidanza. So we got your engineering sections, electrical engineering, bunks and showers, forward cargo hold down at the bottom, various corridors and air shafts. We've got the bridge up top here, just about see it there. Confirmation that it is the USCSS Fidanza. We have Mother, that's where you interact with the computer, of course. We have the officer's mess, we have the hypersleep compartment, lockers, and the infirmary down there for getting your treatment. On the flip side, so this is the mining colony layout, and this is very different in style. Of course, we have the refinery core over here. We have up here what is listed is D block engineering. We've got a couple of workshops here with different tools. We have a reactor core down here with reactor control, and then a control room and office down below, along with refinery control. C block with the med bay above here. We have the ops section here and administration section here. We've got recreation, kitchen cantina, freezer, station manager's quarters, and crew units and showers down below. So, as always, I love the maps in Free League's products. They're beautifully designed, lovely to look at. There's details that pop out to me every time I have another look, which I really enjoy. And we have our smaller maps here. So this is interesting. Looks like something mysterious you may encounter during the course of the adventure. We'll leave it at that. And then we have the smaller map here, which the GM can use to track movement. Once again, you have the annotations for the different sections. So I should have shown you this instead of trying to show you the big map, but I love showing off the big maps. More details about what's going on in Jeremiah 6. So I'll hide that from your greedy eyes for now. So yeah, a lot of fun to be had in this scenario. I'm really looking forward to trying this out. You know, you've got this kind of space trucker crew coming in. Stuff's going down on the mining colony. You got to check it out. I think it's going to be very entertaining and very much in the traditional Alien style, which will be lots of fun. This handout, I think, is beautiful and very emblematic of the new graphical style of the game. Got our lovely set of handouts here in the retro future style. Of course, the rules book, and of course, our lovely set of tokens. The Please Buy More Free League, Bonanza, and our cards, which just about fit. So I'll put it in this way, I think. Yeah, there we go. Good enough. All right, so now we'll move on to the core rulebook. I'm not going to go through all the many details of this. I think, you understand all the core things you need to know about the rules in that booklet within Hope's Last Day. This just adds a lot more to that, like character creation and additional things you can do. So, like I said, the overall vibe has not changed too much. It's just a hell of a lot more readable, and the rules are much easier to parse if you're not an experienced role player, I believe. And I really, really like the new graphical style, I have to say. It's done by Johan Noor, who did Morkborg, but it's not in that style at all. It's not the art punk style where every page is different, every 2-page spread is different. It's a consistent look throughout the book. Everything is focused on readability and good solid structure. So he's done a fantastic job, and I'm very much looking forward to the later delivery of the other 2 expansion books in that new layout style. I think they're going to be fantastic. So what do the core rules have to say when you pick it up off the shelf? Quite a bit. Again, we have the I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies. And they talk about, toot their own horn about winning any awards and all that stuff. Bold new graphic design, life path character generation, which I love, from Traveler. Revised and expanded core rules for stealth, stress, and panic, which we've seen. Reworked combat rules for armor, ammo, grenades, stuns, and spaceships. New iconic weapons, ships, and locations from the hit film Alien Romulus, which is another nice thing to add in. New rules and tools in high demand, including zero-G, miniatures play support, and expanded campaign play. The Tartarus Sector campaign setting. And Last Survivor, a robust solo mode for beginning without a game mother. It's pretty cool. And then we have some sample artwork as well. Got a lovely cover on this one. I really like this. Flamethrower shooting out here, and a cool looking space marine type. But lurking behind them is this giant specter of the facehugger, which is where all the troubles usually begin. Right inside from the beginning, we can see the new graphic design at work. So a lovely image of the stars, the middle heavens. Again, everything super readable, really well laid out. Got a great sense of scale, and you know exactly what you're looking at with each system, where it belongs to politically. It's just a really well done map of charted space, and all the important sites are noted. So like LV-426 is out here, for example. And it helps you understand that this franchise is a hell of a lot of lore that doesn't necessarily come through in the films, but it comes through in expansions to that universe through excellent writers like Andrew E. C. Gaska. So first things to say is that this book, it has the standard Free League approach for a TOC, which I love, where each section gets an image to give you a vibe for that section. A great title. First one in Space is Hell. Then we have our character building rules, the skills and talents, stealth and combat expanded. We've got more gear and tech, including vehicles. Hard Life Amongst the Stars. This is where we get into space travel rules, space combat, living space. Then we have Principles of Being the Game Mother, including structuring campaign play. And they give you a big lore dump about governments, corporations, important systems and planets, alien species far beyond just the single xenomorphs that we see in the starter set, for example, including some other extrasolar species. And hopefully we'll get the cool ones from Alien Earth. Mixed feelings about that show, to be honest, but the eyeball octopus was amazing. And then we have a big section here about campaign play, which is where we get lots of different ideas about how to generate campaigns and encounters. Then the Tartarus sector setting, which you can use. Jackson Star and Novgorod Station or locations you can use. Then we have in our appendices, we have the life path character generation, which is awesome. Then you have your Last Survivor solo mode at the end of the book. And you can see after that you have your upgrades, equipment, listings, and character sheets. So we're way below the page count of the first edition. So the first edition was 400-page book. Now we're around about 314, 15 pages. We still start with this lovely spread. We have this is the original art from the first edition called Rulebook, which I like. Space is hell, of course. That's always the case. Then we have the basics of living on the frontier, the background of what the Evolved Edition is like. They have details as well on how to play first edition expansions with the Evolved Edition rules. And throughout the book, similar to the Star Trek 1E, and we have these lovely little log entries and bits of color to talk about the territories of the frontier and the different political entities that occupy them, which we saw on the map. Some rumors about the frontier and the facts of what's actually happening. Crew expendable. So there is an in-universe book written about the events of Alien. There are potential flashpoints that might lead to war between the different sections of, the megacorps and the different political entities within the space frontier. Then we got a timeline of the Alien universe to date. We're going up to 2180 here. Some careers that you can have on the frontier. So space truckers, it's not as lucrative as it used to be, but basically you're hauling refineries and cargo between Earth and the colonies is still big business. So with newer and faster FTL drives, you have much shorter travel times between worlds than before. So starship crews don't have to spend as much time in stasis. You get compensated for time you lose in hypersleep as well. Then you have your Colonial Marines. The U.S. Colonial Marine Corps represents the finest fighting force ever assembled. They include vehicle operators and pilots, combat technicians, heavy weapon specialists, medics, careers, and career officers, and that's what we get into with the Colonial Marines expansion book. Much more detail about being a space marine, which is very cool. Then you got your frontier colonist. To most, becoming a colonist means you accept a hard life with little reward other than satisfaction of a job well done. Your hands are always dirty and your feet are always tired. And a lot of the planets in the alien universe are actively hostile to human life. So we saw that in Alien Romulus, where anybody who hadn't left the atmosphere had never seen the sun. Corporation reps, of course, they have tons of power, more power than they should, and they are everywhere and watching everything. They talk about role-playing in the alien world, the cinematic versus campaign play description we saw before. They mention 3 key themes being the space truckers, colonial marines, and frontier colonists. The expansion handbooks for campaign play, like Colonial Marines Operations Guide and Building Better Worlds, are available for 1E and are currently being redone for Evolved, as I said before, so we'll get those pretty soon, I think. So the key themes of an alien game, you gotta have space horror, sci-fi action, and a sense of wonder, discovery. And you have your character sheets, once again, your dice, cards, safety tools, time measurements. We get our what is it, a role-playing game section, and then we're into character creation. There's a 10-step process. You choose your career, determine your attributes, determine your skills, then your career talent, your name, your appearance, your personal agenda you can decide on. Then you choose your buddy and rival, pick your gear and signature item, and roll for cash. There's also the life path method as well, which takes more time, but lets you flesh out your character's past. Something I enjoy about this is that the system works out your backstory, because then you don't end up with people writing 10-page backstories for the characters that are going to die in 2 seconds. Core concepts, so your first choice is your career. You can do random attributes, or you can distribute them by having a total of 14 points. You may assign no less than 2 and no more than 4 to any one attribute except the key attribute for your career, which you can have a 5 in. Androids get a +3 bonus to 2 attributes of their choice after the 14 attribute points have been assigned, and get a maximum score of 8 in their key attribute and 7 in another, but there are drawbacks to being an android. You can't push skill rolls for 1. You don't have any stress or stress level, which is good. No panic rolls, which is good. And you suffer damage differently. The problem is, if you're trying to not be seen as an android, then these things can become pretty obvious tells. So you need to be careful about exposing yourself to danger, because people will see you being unflappable and not panicking, or they might see you get damaged and reveal the machinery underneath, the biomechanical stuff that makes you run. Then we talk about skills, talent. So when you start your character, you get 1 talent. Your career will get 3 talents to choose from, and you can earn more during the course of the game. You have your stress and resolve, your amount of health that you have. Your personal stuff, like your name, appearance, personal agenda, and buddies and rivals, will be something you can choose, unless you're doing a cinematic campaign, in which case the agendas are predetermined for you. In campaign play, you can play one of the suggested agendas listed with your career or make up something yourself. Then you have your gear. In cinematic play, again, your sheet that you are given tells you what gear you start with. In campaign play, your career gives you gear to choose or roll for. If you get a weapon, you always get 2 full reloads for it. In addition, you're assumed to have a uniform or civilian clothing. You also get some Weyland-Yutani dollars. The career indicates how many. Then there's more to read later about cash and how to spend it. So there's a sample here of going through the character creation process, which is very quick. You want to pick a signature item, something that's of no practical use but has sentimental value. And they talk about encumbrance again. Time is consumable. During certain sort of countdown situations, the GM might set the amount of shifts you have left, for example, as a consumable. And they talk about supply rolls more generally and the outcomes for those. And the supply dial used which is available in the starter set, and developing your character. So at the end of session, they do a thing I don't always like, which is where you go around the houses and you talk about what contribution each player made individually. I don't like that too much because if you have people in your group who are a bit shy or neurodivergent or whatever, and they may not be as open or take more time to open up, they'll get less XP, which is not encouraging. But you're supposed to ask if they participated. You get 1 XP just for being there. Did you risk or sacrifice something for your personal agenda? Did you risk your life for your buddy? Did you challenge or stand up to your rival? Did you make a panic roll? Did you overcome a dangerous event using violent or non-violent means? Did you make a significant discovery or revelation? Did you perform an extraordinary action of some kind, or did you earn any money? You can only get 1 XP per question, and sometimes it's not clear cut, so you then have to discuss it. That's another reason I don't like it too much. I prefer to give sort of an overview of how the group performed, and then assign a number of XP across the group. If they want to divide it up differently, they can, but typically I'd give them enough that they can divide it in reasonable sized chunks evenly. Then you can use your XP to increase your skills, and you can learn new talents. So if you increase the skill level by 1 step, you pay a number of XP equal to the skill level you want to attain multiplied by 5. So if you want to go from skill level 2 to 3, that'll be 15 XP. You can only increase the skill level 1 step at a time. Learning a new skill at level 1 costs 5 XP. However, you must have either used the skill and succeeded without skill level during the session, or been instructed by a teacher for at least 1 shift. The teacher must have at least skill level 1. And you can learn a new talent for 5 XP. You can choose them freely from your career talents and the general talents in Chapter 3. After the end of a game session, you are free to change your buddy and rival PCs as you want as well. Then we have our career listings. So we won't go in detail through all of these, but we'll use the Colonial Marine as an example. So the key attribute is strength, which means you can have up to 5 in that, or potentially 8 if you are an android. Key skills for them are close combat, stamina, and range combat. Their cash to start with is D6 times 100 Weyland-Yutani dollars. They can choose or roll a D3 to get a talent. Banter means the stress level of you and everyone in short range drops 2 steps in every stretch spent in a safe place if they're hanging out with you. They have the overkill mode, which we saw in action in one of the character sheets before, or precise shooter. When making a supply roll for ammo, you get to roll 2 dice fewer than your ammo supply rating to a minimum of 1 die. So that means you're less likely to roll a face hugger. And they have names which you can roll for or choose, or of course you can make up your own. Same with personal agendas. You could pick being a decorated hero and defending your reputation at all costs. 2, you once helped to cover up a war crime no one must ever know. 3, the death of your buddy has spooked you and now you secretly fear combat and confrontation. You have to overcome it. But you can also make up your own agenda as well. Appearance, you can choose to or roll D6 twice. For gear, you can choose a roll on a D6 twice. You can get a pulse rifle, smart gun, motion tracker, 2 electroshock grenades, pressure suit, and personnel armor as possible items. And then for a signature item, they give 3 examples: a bullet that you survived, lodged in your body somewhere, a lost friend's dog tags, or a trophy from a defeated enemy. Of course, you can make up your own thing too. And all the careers follow this same pattern. We have the Colonial Marshal, their key attribute being wits. As well, the company agent, their attribute being wits. They are very much into cunning and deception. Colonial Marshal is about authority, investigating things within their purview. You got the kid. You didn't ask for this. Your key attribute is your agility and your small size. And your talents are funny. You get stuff like hard to catch, lucky, and nimble. And your signature items, so things like lunchboxes covered in stickers or a favorite dollar action figure. Medics, of course, your key attribute is empathy. Your key skills include medical aid. You have field medic, nurse, or surgeon as possible talents, all of which help you to keep your compadres alive, which is very helpful. And your gear are all about medikit type stuff or certain drugs. You have your officer. So you're the authority figure, the role model, the voice of your superiors, and the enlisted crew's advocate. You're also the butt of all their jokes. But you get cool talents like field commander, frontline leader, and pull rank. So you can order non-officer NPCs around with that, which is pretty cool. You can get some decent gear, including pistols, the EVA pistol, motion tracker, Seeks, and PDAT, which gives you that +1 to command we saw in the box set. Now pilots, their key attribute is agility, and they're all about flying in aerospace. So they get talents related into that, full throttle, plus 2 dice to piloting, plus 2 dice to piloting for one specific ship, or like the back of your hand, or reckless, which we've seen before as a more general talent. They can roll for gear that includes a service pistol, hand radio, uplink terminal, maintenance jack, compression suit, or a diagnostic device. So they're really focused on flying and doing it damn well. Then you got your roughnecks. So these are the manual laborers on the frontier. Been in countless barroom brawls, you swear a lot and belch at the dinner table. You're uncouth, but you don't really care. Your talents are about being tough and rugged. Your key attribute is strength as well, with key skills being heavy machinery, stamina, and close combat. Your talents include being resilient, having steady hands, or true grit. And you can roll for equipment that fits the idea of manual laborer, like a bolt gun, a cutting torch, some doses of hydration, maintenance jack, compression suit, or a high beam flashlight. Helpful in dark zones, by the way. You have scientists, key attribute being wits, of course. You got your analysis, inquisitive, which allows you to push wits rolls twice, or xenomorphology talents. They have gear based on observation and collecting data. So digital video camera, a SEEX and PDAT for command bonuses, a system diagnostic device, personal data transmitter, motion tracker, or medkit. And then we get into your skills and talents. So they tell you how to use your skills. Again, we have the 12 skills all listed here with the attributes they go along with. Then the skill roll procedure, the rolling without skill, then your modifiers, helping, multiple successes, pushing your roll, all stuff that we've seen before. Stress response, passive rolls, opposed rolls. Lovely artwork here of somebody leaping whilst the xenomorph is right on their tail. And then we got your skills described in some detail here. They remind you that manipulation is not mind control. What you're trying to convince your adversary to do must be somewhat reasonable, or the GM can just disallow it. Using manipulation on someone successfully is affected by your negotiating position. So certain advantages, like having more people, your opponent having suffered damage, etc., will give you advantages. If they have those advantages, then you will get negatives to your negotiation using manipulation. Then we've got talents. So you've got your talents for each class listed out here. General talents, these can apply to anyone. So when you're buying up new talents, these can be where you really get to customize your character out of their original career. You get stuff like bonus shares, combat, veteran. You can keep your initiative card from the previous round. Gunner, giving you plus 2 dice to range combat for vehicle weapons or spaceship weapons. You can have martial arts. You can be a machine gunner. You can be a pack mule to carry more stuff. You can do rapid fire better. You can get a second wind, which means it's easier for people to rally you. You can be a spaceship mechanic. You can be stealthy. You can have 0G training. Lots of cool stuff in there. Then we get into the stealth and combat. Really nice atmospheric picture again on that 2-page spread. So here we have the combat rules, which we've been through before. We start out with stealth mode after the description of space and time. Got the stealth sequence again. The use of crawl spaces, detection, hiding, motion trackers, then combat and initiative, the holding off action, actions and movement in general, leaving combat, close combat with its more complicated but still pretty clear flowchart, range combat with the appropriate modifiers. Again, it's the same chart as in the starter set, so you're not missing any detail there. Detail on friendly fire, ammo, full auto, and the application of damage, including armor piercing, barriers, critical injury, handling death, and we have our big old damage flow chart here, an example of character death. And then we have this much bigger critical table. So it was only 6 options here. It's a D66. We have the big differential here, which is between lethal and non-lethal injuries. The lethal injuries start from only 44, which is pretty easy to get to on a D66. So, a little bit less than half the table is lethal results. And so you'll need to roll survival rolls over the interval given to make sure that you don't die. And the crit will have an effect on you as well. So if you get a severed arm, it's lethal. You need to roll survival rolls every stretch, unless somebody tries to help you. You get -3 on all rolls that require 2 arms. Then to fix it requires surgery and a prosthesis. But the last 3 results, 64, 65, 66, instant death. Instant death, your story ends here, your heart beats for the last time. Yeah, critical hits are pretty rough. Of course, the harder the critical hit, the longer the healing time, which is determined randomly. The effects get worse and worse, and the time limit for your death rolls gets shorter and shorter. So, if the damage from any single instance, any kind of attack, equals or exceeds double your maximum health, you're just killed outright, which is similar to Call of Cthulhu, where even in Pulp Cthulhu, if you take more damage than your maximum health at any point, you just instantly die. Some weapons do stealth damage. These don't reduce your health. Instead, you need to make a stamina roll with a negative modifier equal to the damage inflicted. And if you fail, you can't do any action on your next turn or any quick actions until then. Then your next turn, you roll stamina unmodified. If you fail again, you're stunned again, and so on until you make a successful stamina roll. So a bit more info about stun here. It's really useful. And then we have our panic rolls with a creepy looking face hugger crawling on the bottom of the page. So same rules as before and the same panic response table as before. So it's not like the crit table where it gets much bigger. But here we have the addition of mental trauma. So if you've rolled a result of 9 or higher on a panic roll, you make an empathy roll after the session, rolling the attribute only, and you can't push. If the roll fails, you develop a mental trauma of some kind. You roll a d66 and pick from the table below. You can only heal this during shore leave in campaign play. You can have confusion, apathy, being overwhelmed, you become an alcoholic, get depressed, phobic, speech loss, nightmares, flashbacks, panic attacks, violence, psychosis, amnesiac, or a personality split, where you create a second character, and every time you gain stress, you switch characters. That's kind of awesome. And then we have other hazards, of course, so we're familiar with these: fatigue, suffocation, hunger, thirst, sleep deprivation, hypersleep. When you get thrown out into the vacuum, it's very, very lethal. Explosive decompression is if you fire guns inside a spacecraft, then if you fire and miss in a zone next to an outer bulkhead that could potentially be breached by the shot, the GM rolls a stress die, and on a facehugger, the barrier is breached. If you try to intentionally shoot a hole in the hull, make a normal range attack with +2 dice. It's bad for everybody. The air will vent out in space at the rate of 1 stretch per affected zone, and the intense draft will require everyone to make a survival roll to perform any action. Most ships will automatically seal off a breached zone. Once the air is gone, anyone still in the vented zone will suffer the effects of vacuum. Pretty cool new stuff there. And our falling damage from before, placed explosions, so from mines and stuff like that. The effects of 0G, which comes into play when gravity generators fail. So in a zone without gravity, all rolls for close combat, heavy machinery, mobility, and ranged combat get -2 dice. In addition, every move requires a successful mobility roll without penalty, with failure meaning you spin in place and suffer +1 stress. If you have 0G training, you don't have any of that to worry about. On the flip side, 0 gravity allows you to move in any direction floating through open air, and you never risk falling damage. Then when they have some more details again about fire and explosions. Then we have disease. So when you can be exposed to a dangerous contagion or infection and roll for stamina to avoid falling sick. It's a passive roll and cannot be pushed. The GM may even roll for you in secret. Contagions have a virulence rating, which is a negative modifier to your stamina. If the virulence is not listed, it's 0. And the diseases can have a wide range of effects. And a common effect is to make you fatigue, triggering further stamina rolls instead of survival, modified for virulence at regular intervals, typically once per shift, with the normal effects of fatigue if you fail. And once you succeed, your immune system has beaten the disease, you can start to recover. If someone cares for you while you're sick, they can roll for medical aid to fight off the disease, replacing your stamina rolls. So medical gear can help out with this. So that'll help you recover more quickly. Then we have radiation. When you're exposed to radiation, you gain rad points like in Traveler, but it's more simplified here. So weak radiation is 1 rad per shift. Strong radiation gives you 1 rad per stretch, and extreme radiation is 1 rad per round. Every time you gain a rad, you must roll a number of dice equal to your total current number of rads that you've accumulated so far. For every success rolled, you suffer 1 point of damage. If you're broken by radiation damage, don't roll for a crit. Instead, make death rolls at the same intervals as above until you're out of the hotspot. As long as you remain in a radiation hotspot, you cannot recover health in any way. After you leave the irradiated area, you heal 1 rad per shift. Then we've got details about synthetics, what they can and can't do, which we saw before. And the Android Critical Systems damage table is the same as before, just a short D6. They mention here that it's illegal to program an Android for violence against humans. Current models are governed by behavioral inhibitors that prevent them from injuring others. Earlier models are more dangerous because they don't have those. Bypass packages are available on the black market for those who want to circumvent these laws. And now we have vehicle combat. So your vehicles have attributes: maneuverability, speed, hull, and armor. The hull is how much damage it can take. The armor is how much it reduces incoming damage. The maneuverability gives a modifier to your piloting skill roll when you're doing challenging maneuvers, and the speed is the number of zones per action that you take driving it. They have vehicle armaments in some cases, fired by the crew or the driver, and there's a list of those, of course, and they can be used as weapons themselves. You can use them as a ram, counts as a close combat attack, but roll for piloting instead of close combat and add the maneuverability. The base damage rating of the attack is your vehicle's hull rating divided by 2, rounding up. Damage to vehicles, they'll have typically an armor armor level that reduces incoming damage. For vehicles, if the armor level is higher than the base damage rating of the weapon, after any modifiers for ammunition and weak spots, the attack cannot breach the armor no matter how many successes they roll. If a vehicle takes damage equal to more than half its hull rating, rounding up, in a single hit, it suffers component damage. So you roll on this table, you could have driver hit, passenger hit, severe spin with a piloting roll to recover. If you don't recover, you're wrecked. A weapon disabled, engine disabled, or a fuel explosion, and everyone is instantly exposed to intensity 9 fire and the vehicle is destroyed. Passengers in an open vehicle or sitting on top of a vehicle can be targeted separately from the vehicle. Aerial vehicles are handled the same way, but they have an altitude as well measured in zones. When moving, you distribute the zones moved on vertical and horizontal movement. On the ground, the speed of an aerial vehicle is typically 1. If an aerial vehicle is wrecked, it crashes violently to the ground, and everybody inside suffers damage equal to the altitude in zones multiplied by 2. You can brace yourself with a hit by rolling mobility, and each success rolled reduces the damage by 1. And we got repairs. So repairing vehicle damage requires one or several heavy machinery rolls. One can be made per shift. Only one person can roll to repair the hull, but others can help. Each success removes 1 point of damage. If the vehicle was wrecked, it's no longer considered wrecked once it has regained at least 1 point of hull. And if you want to repair a component that's been damaged, you'll need to repair it typically with a heavy machinery roll in addition to any roll for repairing hull damage. And that work will take another shift as well. Then we got your gear and tech. So I won't go through all this, but you get to see loads of juicy pictures. We got cool handguns. We got rifles. We've got smart guns and pulse rifles. We've got incinerators, pump action shotguns. We've got our phase plasma guns, harpoon guns, RPG launchers. And then we've got sentry guns, grenade launchers, fire axes, HEDP grenade, high explosive dual purpose, electroshock grenade, seismic survey charges, stun batons, cutting torches. We've got other gear like suits and armor. So personnel armor, Kevlar vests, compression suits, pressure suits, all-world survival suits, Weyland-Yutani ape suit, and the P5000 powered workloader, classic from Aliens. And we got computer mainframes. There are 2 major systems in use on the frontier, Mother 6000, 6500, 7000, and 9000. And there's Apollo as well, which is Seegson's answer to Mother. It's designed to coordinate Seegson's working Joe synthetics to run a starship, but in all other regards is less advanced than Mother. Mother has a bunch of skills, including Comtech 5, Piloting 5, Observation 5. Mother at the lowest level. At the highest level, you got Comtech 10, Piloting 8, Observation 10, Range Combat 9. But it costs 50 million Weyland-Yutani dollars. That's a lot. And we got data storage. So one long data disk will hold up to 10 zettabytes of data, which is an enormous amount. Or you can have magnetic tape that can hold up to 120 terabytes, and they're much cheaper, $5 versus $5,000. And you got diagnostics and displays, so computer terminals, the special watch, personal data transmitter, IFF transponders, which will be helpful if you're trying to avoid being shot by automated defenses. Personal data tablet, uplink terminals, data transmitter cards, system diagnostics, comm units, holotabs, modular computing devices, and magnetic tape recorders. Then we got a few guys checking out something happening on an offshore refinery or oil rig or something similar. We got vision devices, so this is stuff to help you see, obviously. Flashlights, optical scopes, motion trackers, neurovision, and we've got another type of motion tracker here, the micro view, which is navigational map system, spectrographic mapping device, and binoculars. General tools, you got a bolt gun, maintenance jack, cutting torch, and power cell. For medical supplies, you get your personal med kit, a surgical kit, an auto dock, which is very expensive, but it cannot treat critical injuries that require surgery. The med pod can give first aid and perform surgery with medical aid skill level 12, but with no pushes. The med pod at 2 million is what you really want on your starship if you can. Pharmaceuticals, you got never sleep pills, hydration, which eliminates fatigue from hypersleep, a Napro leave, an instant pain reliever that reduces stress to 0. We got food and drink, prefab meals, candy bars, recreational drugs as well. They can reduce your stress plus or minus 1. X drugs, which are extreme drugs that can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And beer and booze also reduce your stress. Bug juice protein drinks, special meals. Coffee increases your stress and postpones fatigue. So you trade over fatigue for stress. Then we got our vehicles. Frontier Colonies Weyland NR9 Series ATV, Hotai Series 8x8 tractor. So you can see they all have their main stats along with any weapons and the overall costs. and the number of passengers they can hold. Here's the APC, which you'll remember from the Aliens movie. Got the VTOL automotive gyro car, the VTOL vertical takeoff and landing tactical drop ship. Got the Weyland-Yutani WY-37B cargo lifter transport sled. And now we get into space stuff. So space travel. They have some nice new flowcharts for us. So we have overcharging the engine. If you want to push the engine to a new level, you roll heavy machinery for one shift. If you get a success, your FTL rating is reduced by 1 for 1 week. A failure, you have a reactor leak and you roll heavy machinery again. If you get a success there, nothing else happens. A failure, you have a reactor breach and you roll again. If you have a success there, no further effect. On a failure, the ship is destroyed. Then they talk about faster than the speed of light travel. When they were first deployed, FTL engines could push a vehicle at 10 to 15 times the speed of light. Modern ships can travel from 50 to 700 times FTL, but it can still take weeks or even years to travel the whole of charted space. Prolonged travel at FTL can cause neurological distortion disorder. That's why they put people in stasis. You can go a bit wacky from going too fast. And they talk about overcharging engines. Each craft capable of FTL speed has an FTL rating that denotes how many days it takes for the ship to traverse 1 parsec on the star map. A lower number means a faster ship. Presently, no existing ship has an FTL rating lower than 1. To calculate your journey, multiply the number of days per parsec by the number of parsecs. Overcharging your engine can reduce your FTL rating, but if it goes wrong, as we've seen, you can blow up the whole ship. Ships built for atmospheric entry and planetary surface landings can be used to land on any rock in space you like, but expect it to be bumpy. And they have, of course, a flowchart for successfully landing on a planet. Neurological distortion disorder is what happens if you're awake during FTL travel. You roll a d6 after each time period in days equal to the FTL rating of the ship, plus 1 to each roll after the first. So out of 1 to 5, no effect. 6 to 7, you become paranoid. 8 to 9, you get epilepsy. 10 to 11, you get dementia. 12 plus, you get psychosis. Pretty bad for everybody concerned. Hypersleep gives you full protection against that, but being abruptly awakened is dangerous. You can be disoriented, have chest pain and nausea. A rude awakening from hypersleep counts on an attack rolled with 6 base dice, with a base damage of 1, with armor having no effect. In addition, any length of time in hypersleep will make you fatigued. The effect can be counteracted with the hydration drug. And they talk about gravity drives. This is a recent development that could cause starships to create a distortion in space-time, allowing ships to travel much faster than conventional FTL, but you would still be required to enter stasis for prolonged journeys. And all the details about these new gravity drives are still classified by Weyland-Yutani. Then we have the details of charted space, stuff about living in space. This is pretty fun to read, so I would leave that to your imagination. Experience of living on deep space, trying to build better worlds, what your living quarters will be like. The aesthetics of the world of Alien are very much workmanlike, function before fashion. It's not the other way around like it is in Cyberpunk 2020 or Cyberpunk Red. You need paper and ID. You're often sort of an indentured servant to the megacorps with poor salaries and very long contracts that you can't get out of. They talk about media, entertainment, religion, including different types of religion, law enforcement and how that works through different levels, including the Interstellar Commerce Commission. Then we got the basics of spacecraft. So we have different classes of ship, which are given a letter designation, each one successively larger than the last with more crew. The FTL rating gets generally bigger, and the signature is how easy the ship is to detect. Their thrusters indicates their kind of maneuverability. The hull is, of course, the amount of damage they can take. The armaments, they can take a certain number of armaments of different size. Then some modules of different size, and the overall cost. A Class X, the largest ship at 2,500 meters, costs you 4 trillion Weyland-Yutani dollars. So, yeah, I mean, you could get some small ships if you manage to have a small personal fortune, but generally speaking, the bigger ships are all owned by corporate interests. They talk about the core components, the internal modules, and the armaments and upgrades you can get for spaceships. There's quite a lot of cool stuff you can do with them. Core components of the ship, things that you can't really be replaced, but you can upgrade them, like the hull, the bridge, sensors, comms, reactor, sublight thrusters, and displacement drives. And your internal modules include things like your AI, air scrubbers, cargo bay, corporate suite, cryo deck, docking umbilical, and your emergency escape vehicle. And they're listed here by size, capacity, and cost. And then we have some more modules: galley, hangar, med lab, salvage crane, science lab, tractor hitch, and vehicle bay to store ground vehicles in. Then you got your space weaponry, ASAT missiles. So these are guided long-range missiles to pack a heavy punch. You have your rail guns, Okay, you have emergency escape vehicles. So these are what you need to do if your ship is in trouble. So you have different classes of ejection pods, they have different capacities and lengths. So the higher the class, the longer it can sustain you and the more people it can sustain, basically. And they'll also be bigger. If you're really screwed and get blown up by somebody in space and you're in an EEV, that's a real bad situation and you'd have to be lucky to come back alive, quite frankly. We've got some more offensive armament possibilities here for spaceships. They give you the modification to your attack rolls, the base damage, the range, the size hardpoint it takes up, and the cost, and the special element. So ASAT missiles you need to pay for each missile. A short lance costs 100,000 and a long lance costs 400,000 per missile. Railguns give you armor piercing, and you have light, medium, and heavy railguns. Particle beam weapons get damage reduced over range. Orbital mines are stationary weapons you can drop behind you. Tactical nukes you can launch on a missile. It costs $50 million a piece. For defensive weaponry, you can do sensor decoys, sensor drones at a hardpoint size 2, and laser arrays for a +2 modifier against incoming fire with size 3 hardpoint, but they cost $45 million. So ships get real expensive real fast. So particle beams, they accelerate particles in a kinetic energy wave that causes damaging ionization, can overheat electronics. Their base damage is reduced by 1 for each range category beyond contact. Third, they inflict no hull damage, only component damage. Orbital mines are very effective against unwanted boarding parties and a cost-effective short-range weapon, but you have to buy each mine separately. Then you got your tactical nukes, deployed from orbit to destroy planetary targets, even entire colonies. A 50 megaton nuke will completely destroy all buildings, kill all living beings with a 10-kilometer radius, and cause damage to buildings and people up to 100 kilometers away from the center. A high-altitude detonation will create an EMP pulse that destroys unshielded electronics. A nuclear missile battery can typically fit 5 missiles. Individual missiles must be purchased separately. And then we have some upgrades. You can get more hardpoints, armored bulkheads. You can boost your displacement drive to get faster FTL. You can purchase that up to 6 times. You can enhance your sensor array. You can get fittings for external modules, but you reduce your thruster rating by 1 each time. You can overpower your thrusters to increase your rating by 1, add planetfall capacity, even to large ships. You can reinforce the frame, increasing the hull rating by 1, and you can purchase that up to 3 times. And you can get stealth tech, so you get hull panels that absorb radar and infrared suppressors to disguise engine flare, so you can run dark without powering down your engines or sensors, and your signature for your ship is reduced by 2. And they talk about the need for regular maintenance with heavy machinery rolls and comtech, and the cost of various ship upgrades here. Spaceships with 2180, so here we have the stats ranging from small to big. So C-class intra-system vessel, that's on the $2 million end, FTL rating of 15, so it takes a while to get anywhere. Here we have the model CM93D Mule, FTL rating of 20. Weyland-Yutani uses these. They bring ore around from one place to another. We've got the model CM90S Corvus for space salvage. Got their internal modules and upgrades listed, of course, for each ship. The CM88G Bison, a well-known vessel in the shipping lanes, originally advertised as an interstellar cruiser, and this is the class that the Nostromo was. In fact, Nostromo is there. The cost, $38.3 million. The CM88H Bison, so that's trying to transform the freighter into a fully fledged towing vehicle. The infamous USCSS Nostromo was an 88B Bison in a towing configuration similar to the H. Of course, it was destroyed in the 2120s when her self-destruct was set by her third officer for reasons unknown. Of course, we know that. Model CYG NS3 Star Clipper. So they're a retired design technically, but still in wide use. They're pretty fast in FTL with a rating of 6. Conestoga class frigate is the most common ship in use by the USCMC and Colonial Marines Bureau. The ill-fated USCMC troop transport USS Sulaco is well known on the frontier, the story of its unfortunate outcome. Conestoga class frigates stats here. Then we have the common spaceships just listed with their costs, role, and the model. So just for reference for the GM really. And a nice little bit of in-character fiction, of course. Then we get into space combat. So the Hope's Last Day starter set includes tokens for spaceship combat, which look like this. So you've got some ship tokens, and one has a ping on it to mark a ship running silent, and a side with a spaceship in crosshairs to use when you have a target lock. Now, space combat, you have different crew positions. Executive officers are overall commanders. They give orders and roll initiative. Navigation, they make piloting rolls for ship maneuvers modified by the thrusters. Science, they operate sensors using comtech. Engineers make repairs using comtech or heavy machinery. Gunners fire the ship armaments using the range combat skill. And each weapon requires at least one gunner. And then we have a new range band for space combat. So contact, you're in the same segment. So that means you can do ramming and boarding. In short range, you're in adjacent segments, and that's as far as you can see visually. Medium is 2 segments away, long up to 4 segments away, extreme is up to 8 segments away, and that's the sensor limit. If you want to avoid detection, you can run dark. Without the stealth technology, though, you'd have to power down your sensors and your engines before you enter sensor range, and that reduces your signature as noted here. Spaceships move at incredible speeds, so 2 ships approaching on different velocity vectors will quickly pass beyond the range of each other's weapons. Drastically changing your vector is hard, so most space combat encounters will be brief. So you have an initial velocity, and you need to take that into account as the ships zoom past each other. Going dark in combat won't make you disappear, but it will reduce your signature, making it harder to target lock. If you want to detect a ship running dark within sensor range, a passive comtech roll is made by our science officer each stretch, modified by the modified signature rating of the hidden ship. And if you power up sensors, then you don't need to roll for that. Powering up engines is done by an engineer and requires a heavy machinery roll, 1 attempt per stretch. NPC ships, when they're running dark and enter sensor range of your ship, the GM will ask you, and your science officer should make a passive comtech roll each stretch without telling you why. If no roll succeeds, you won't spot the NPC ship at all. Spotting the ship and getting sensor lock is really the big key to space combat here. Spaceship combat doesn't use initiative cards. Instead, after detection, you have an initiative roll, which is an open oppose roll again for command, performed by the executive officer, the XO. It doesn't count as an action, and then you can choose then whether to act first or last in each phase of combat. So you have different combat phases with command phase, sensor phase, movement phase, attack phase, and engineering phase, and then you have interrupt actions as well. Command phase, the executive officer gives orders and rolls command for each success. You get +1 die to 1 action you can give to another crew member when they follow their order. During the sensor phase, you can attempt a target lock with a comtech modified by the signature of the enemy ship. The enemy ship can try to evade with their science officer. They can roll an opposed comtech roll with their number of successes rolled, reducing the number of successes rolled by you. And you can power sensors up or down as well. In the movement phase, you can accelerate, rolling for piloting, modified by thrusters. For each success, the approach velocity of your ship goes up by 1. Decelerate has the opposite effect, and you can also use that to reverse the direction of your ship's approach if you want to back out of the situation. You can ram if you're in contact range at the start of the stretch. You roll for piloting, modified by thrusters, and on a success, both ships suffer base damage equal to your hull rating divided by 2, rounding up. Extra damage due to additional successes inflicted on the target ship only. Then they have a target lock table here, so depending on the quality of your target lock, if you have malfunctioning sensors, if your target ship sensors are online and target ship sensors are offline, then it'll be easier to get the target lock done. If you're at contact range, you can also try to dock with the ship if you both have the same approach velocity, but you need a docking station module. You roll piloting modified by thrusters. If successful, your engineers try to breach the enemy ship. Then you have the attack phase. Target locked enemy within range can be attacked. You roll for range combat, the gunner does, modified for the weapon used, and on a hit, you get the base damage +1 damage for every success, and damage of course can be reduced by armor. As interrupt action, the target can try to launch countermeasures. The gunner will make it an opposed range combat roll, and again, your successes will cancel out theirs, and you can declare it on the enemy's turn. The engineering phase, you can try emergency repairs. A minor or major component damage can be hastily repaired using heavy machinery or comtech as indicated on the tables. Minor or major component damage. And you can power the engine up or down. Powering down modifies signature by -2 but makes all actions in the movement phase impossible. Opening an airlock is only for use if you dock with another ship. Breach that ship and your crew can then board it for regular combat. Reactor overload will allow you to blow up the ship at the end of the following stretch, destroying the ship and killing everyone on board. So you need to make sure everybody gets into those emergency escape vehicles. Then you've got stress and panic in space combat, so you get stress from pushing a roll, getting a stress effect, or your ship suffers minor component damage. Panic rolls happen if you suffer major component damage, or your ship is disabled, or if another PC on the ship bails out, which is panic effect 9 to 11. So here we have a space panic response. Bail out means that they immediately try to abandon ship and get to the nearest EEV. All of the PCs on the ship must make an immediate panic roll themselves because they start freaking out. They see you trying to escape. Minor component damage, so you can have damage to things like your auto docks or AI, your airlock, cryo chambers, crew injuries, reactor leaks. They get progressively more annoying typically as the number goes up, and then the repair roll you need is designated on the table. So they have a little handy reference here. If you get 1 or more damage, you just get minor damage. Half of total HP or more, you get major damage. Total HP or more, total loss of ship and crew. So Space combat, as in every sci-fi game, is very risky. Major component damage can take your AI offline, destroy your escape pods so they can't be used, destroy your sensors, destroy your FTL, destroy your armament, a random armament at a time, cause an engine failure, critical crew injury, a random crew member is broken, bridge can be exposed to vacuum, all personnel on the bridge suffer explosive decompression, reactor breach, you lose all propulsion, strong radiation in the reactor control area, weak radiation in the rest of the ship, chain reaction, roll twice on the table, or reactor detonation, loss of ship and all crew. Particle beam weapons work differently, so countermeasures don't work against them, and their base damage is reduced by 1 beyond contact range, but they don't inflict hull damage, only component damage. You need multiple repair rolls to fix major component problems. EVA repairs are possible as well, but you need to go spacewalking. If you can't do that, then you'll need to go to a space station with a dry dock to get those repairs. And then we have a lovely ship combat example with diagrams, each phase explicated. And then we have GM tips, game principles, themes, how to get those into play, stress and horror, creating NPCs, how to structure a cinematic adventure, campaign play. You even have a D6 table if you're not sure what to do for different overarching themes, corporate greed, intrigue, tidings of war, echoes from the past, reading lists. So if you want to dive deeper into the alien universe, here's some cool stuff you can pick up. Then we have the background on government and corporations, Three World Empire, United Americas, Union of Progressive Peoples, the Independent Core System Colonies, the Interstellar Commerce Commission, of course, Weyland-Yutani, the Megacorp of Death, LaSalle Bionational, Siegson, another Megacorp with one of their regular Joe working androids. Then we have key systems and planets. Again, I'm not going to go too into this because your GM, your game mother, will want to use these as adventure sites. And they go through nice little inset diagrams, zooming in on the area of space around these sites. You go into the outer veil, the outer rim. Then we have the Tartarus sector campaign setting, which is pretty cool. So we got some systems zoomed in more detail, some information about key systems in the Tartarus sector. We've got some adventure hooks and some little background fiction to catch your interest, interesting places to visit. Then we have alien species. So again, we have the engineers, which we saw in Romulus, for example. We have their technology, and then we have the xenomorphs, the various states of life, the xenomorph stages of the XX121 xenomorph, the standard one. And stage 6 is the Queen, which we've seen in the end of Aliens, of course. So they have their acid splash special attack, which is a big problem for everyone. And then we have details about each individual stage, what they can do, what face huggers do when they attack you, the skill and attribute listings for each stage. And then we have some in-character fiction about it. We have the chest burster, the Bambi burster, the Queen burster, drones, scouts, and stalkers. We have the attack table for chest bursters, the attack table for drones, scout, and stalkers. Head bite automatically kills the victim in one dreadful blow. Pretty rough if you roll 6 for an alien. Soldier and sentry attacks are listed here as well. And we have the hive mind, which allows them to operate in unison if there's a queen present. And we have other xenomorph types. We have the queen producing her royal jelly. There's some thoughts about stage 7 and beyond and stats for Praetorians, Chargers, and Crushers, and the queen herself. And then their attack roll here. Species interaction. Why can't we all just get along? Well, yeah. Then we have the creepy neomorph. So, these are sort of mutations that have been created as part of experimentation for using the xenomorph as a bioweapon, which is a really terrible idea. We have the bloodburster and neomorph attack tables, some of which are lethal. Then we have other extrasolar species, the harvesters, with their own attack rolls, lion worms, Tanakan scorpionids, the swarm of space locusts, either originated or came to rest on planet LVKR-115, and they have their own attack table, including stripped to the bone. Yikes. And there's a containment and termination protocol for them. Then we have the campaign play with a campaign frame. So do you want your players to be employees or freelancers? Do you want them to have a starting spaceship? Probably a good idea. They could be space truckers, and it gives you some ideas of jobs, employers, suggested spacecraft for all these suggestions. Colonial Marines, frontier colonists, and then they highlight the campaign expansions. coming out soon in the new Evolved Edition. Then they give you some hot tips on creating star systems and main worlds, and you can roll 2d6 to get these vaguely relatable planet sizes and types. Add modifiers for ice planets or gas giant moons. Different types of atmosphere, from thin to breathable, toxic, dense, corrosive, infiltrating, or special. Then you roll for the temperature of the world, whether it's frozen, cold, temperate, hot, or burning. And notice a lot of the results are bad. There's only like one sort of reasonable result, and the rest are terrible. Desert, arid world, dry temperate, wet world, and water world for geosphere. Terrestrial terrain, so we have a D66, a lot of possibilities here. So a nice little set of random generators to create new star systems for your campaign. You can generate ice planet terrain, colony sizes and their missions, orbital components, like maybe there's a ring around the planet, D3 moons, or maybe a survey station or a transfer station. You can even roll D6 times, maybe it's a really busy colony. An established colony, in fact, give you +2 on the roll. Then colony allegiance, who do you want to be hooked up with? You can roll a 3d6, be aligned with independent core system colonies or one of these corporations, or corporations from the American or Anglo-Japanese arm, what type of faction you want to be a part of, and some great campaign hooks here on the G66 table. Then we have our full star system generator, job generator, cargo run generator with cargo goods, destinations, complications, the whole thing. Military mission generator, mission table, destination table, and complications table. Expeditions, including sponsors, bonus rewards, missions, destinations, and complications. Plot twists as well. And then encounters. So in star systems, you might meet another ship, encounter things on the surface, or have general colony encounters. And we have tables, of course, for those. So star system encounters on a D66. Ship reactions, if you meet another ship and detect each other. Surface encounters, if you land on the planet. And general encounters while you're on board a colony. Public area encounters, habitation area, operations area, spaceports. Then you can have shore leave. That gives you time to heal your critical injuries. You can recover from mental trauma. You need to roll for empathy. You can't push it. If you're successful, you can remove mental trauma. You can pursue your agenda on shore leave, or you can socialize and roll once on the appropriate table for shore leave events. Here we have shore leave events, D66, lots of cool stuff on there. And we have shore leave events others, if not colonial marines. And we have NPCs, so whenever you need an NPC, you can generate one from the list here. Pretty good set of examples here. Then we got more about the Tartarus sector, details about systems and brief history, more detail about the systems and colonies. A bunch of cool stuff here, which I won't spoil for you. What the hell's going on there? Don't want that. What's really happening? And then we have a Jackson Star remote frontier colony on LV-410 in the Alfeo system in the far reach of the American arm. So here we have a colony setting. We have a lovely map here, locations being described, and Novgorod Station, a 10,000-ton transfer station orbiting the star Alpha Fornakis with 140 personnel. We have a main concourse, life support deck, habitation deck, upper tower, science labs, and comms sections. And then we have some NPCs running the station, some possible events that can happen, lovely diagram of the Novgorod station, and a typical cabin, and some suggestions for scenarios, a more detailed map of every level of the Novgorod, which is very cool. Now we have our life path character generation, which is great. You determine if you're human or android, roll for your origin, gain 3 points in random general skills, determine your early life, gaining 2 attribute points and 2 skill points, experience a life event, and gain 2 more attribute points and 2 points in random general skills, then gain 2 points in attributes of your choice and apply for your first career. If you're successful, gain 2 points in career skills, a roll for gear, and a roll for your first paycheck. Serve your first term, roll to see where you were posted and how well you performed, gain 1 more point in a random career skill, a random talent, another roll for gear, and another paycheck. You can then do additional terms following the same process, but for each term you must reduce an attribute of your choice by 1 point. Then at the end you get your psych evaluation, and then you do your final touches, which is the stuff you can do for yourself. So it's pretty straightforward, just rolling on tables and seeing what fun or crazy stuff happens in your early life. You got your life events table here, then you have your random general skills you can add to when you get points, your careers with their requirements, the possible paycheck, and random skills that you can get from spending a term in those. And your career terms, you can get some favors or disasters that can happen. You roll 2d6 on the table on page 288 and apply any modifiers you gain during your life path to the psych evaluation. Here we have the career postings. Your psych evaluation is down here. You can be dangerous or unstable, flashbacks, defensive, untrustworthy, night sweats, nightmares, mild trauma. Higher results, you're well balanced, positive and compliant, invested in your work, zealous and enthusiastic, supportive of the officials, all the good things they like. Then we have the Last Survivor solo mode, which I think is great for those of you that like solo play. I am not one of those people. I think it's been established now with the literature as well that playing RPGs with other people is actually really good for you, but playing solo will certainly stimulate your mind, but won't give you the same enjoyment socially and mentally as playing with other people. So the solo rules, I'm really glad they're there, and certainly they're great generators for one-off scenarios if you're stuck for what to do on a night of Alien with your buds. But I personally wouldn't use it to play on my own. But having more tables and more generators is always a good thing, particularly with games where you might want to have really interesting and unusual stuff happening. Then we've got upgrades that you can get for your weapons and so forth. Overall gear listing all nicely put into one place. Got your vehicles, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, vehicle weapons. Then we have your character sheet and your ship sheet as well, where you can list all your different damage you may have gotten, hull and armor stats, the FTL ratings, thrusters, internal modules, etc. And then we have a nice little index at the end. And at the end here, this is the Space Combat Tactical Map. So it's really simple. You just have a token for your ship, and depending on your movement, you adjust your relative distance. So that's that. And the very last thing we'll look at is the lovely Game Master screen. Of course, as with all Free League products, they come with a little advertising copy in the package before you open it. It just shows you what it does and what it's for. It's got a lovely bit of artwork on the outside, mimicking the effect of being inside the mother chamber, which, never really made design sense, but looks really cool. All the buttons, though, look the same, and I don't know how the hell you're supposed to train to use something like that. But yeah, very cool and well done. And then on the flip side, of course, we have the actual tables that the game mother will need. So a list of full actions, quick actions, close combat, flowchart, skill flowchart, stealth flowchart, time divisions, and we have your range combat attacking flowchart, range attack modifiers, range categories, barriers to shooting, your damage flowchart. And then the last page of the screen here is about panic and stress. Your stress response roll, panic roll procedure, and your panic response table. So really everything you need as a game mother to run a successful night of Alien. So all together, I would say I'm really happy with this content. Overall, I think they've done a really nice job in, as they say, evolving Alien, taking it to a better place in some key rules areas and making the visual design just that much more attractive and exciting. I really, really like these two box sets, although I do wish the starter set was a bit more substantial as far as the length of the adventure. It does feel like a little bit less of a value proposition, but you can still use the original starter with the evolved rules. Nothing's going to stop you there. But yeah, so is this worth it if you're new to the system? Absolutely. The books look great and work great and read great, and you will have fun. I guarantee that. If you enjoy horror, and particularly retro future science fiction, these are an absolute must-buy, and particularly if you love the franchise. Should you get these if you already have Alien? There's not a question. I think if you're already clear on rules adjustments need to be made for stuff like stealth and panic responses and so on, maybe the new additions won't excite you that much, but to me, the new layout is very, very attractive. I'm really excited to get the other two campaign expansions in that format, and to eventually get the Space Trucker expansion, which is still due to come out. It's kind of funny to me that we're going to get a Space Trucker expansion for Traveler before we get one for Alien, which is pretty funny to me. But yeah, I think they've done a nice job with this. I'm happy with the components for the most part. I do think that the scenario, even though Hope's Last Day is a good scenario and they have beefed it up a little bit, I would have liked to have seen a larger scale scenario like we got, and a larger scale rulebook like we got in the original starter set. But it's still a great value for the money in terms of getting that instead of just the dice and nothing else. You get a supply counter, you get ship counters, you get lots of useful stuff that you will use throughout your Alien RPG career. Still very much worth buying. The rulebook is great. Not having an intro adventure is kind of rough, but I mean, the cinematic adventures are out there already, and the new starter set is basically functioning as the intro adventure and giving you all the components you need in the bargain. So that's kind of the idea. But they're obviously coming out with a new series of cinematic adventures. I'm hoping they're as good as what we got from Andrew E.C. Gaska with the Draconis Strain trilogy. They were really, really good and very much enjoyable to play and run. I'm sure Free League won't leave us out in the cold too much, and will try to apply their usual standards of high quality to the franchise. But I was a little bit put off by Coriolis the Great Dark, I have to say. say. More on that in a future video. So I was a little bit upset about that one. The original Coriolis much better in my opinion, but here in Alien, they just evolved things in a nice and solid direction, put the rules on a better footing, made the layout much easier to read and understand, and the rules much easier to understand. So it's a good buy and a good upgrade. So that would be my recommendation. I have played Alien before, and I'll continue to play it in this new evolution, and it will be an easier experience, I believe, because of the changes they've made. So that's the best you can ask for from a sort of interim update rather than a full edition change. It's made things a little bit better, but kept compatibility for the most part, and it's not difficult to run your existing stuff under these new rules at all. So that is Alien, the Evolved Edition, the current set of stuff that is out. As soon as the other campaign expansions are out, I will cover those as well, obviously. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this preview of what you get if you have this coming to you already, or if you're thinking about buying it. I hope this helps you make a call on whether it's worth it or not. And let me know what you think of the video, of course. If you like what you see, please click like and subscribe and the little bell thingy to let you know when a new videos come out on my channel. If you want to help out more directly, you can click on the Ko-fi link down below and buy me a cup of coffee. And every little bit helps. I do spend a lot in RPGs, as you see, as well as some other tabletop games as well. So I hope you're all happy and healthy and keeping well. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the comments down below and in the next video also. So take care, and bye-bye.